welcome. He's my mate. The mighty Win is with me, all the way on his jolly bobs. And again, like I say, what a morning it's been for Newcastle United. On the obviously the nearly the eve of the game. Obviously, we've moved to Sunday, but we have had the press conference. And what we're going to do, we're going to be listening to the press conference, and we're going to be obviously stopping and starting the video, and obviously talking about each individual question and answer responded by Eddie Howe. So before we go any further, let's just do some housework and then we'll crack on with the show. So again, welcome to all that are watching across all of the platforms. Thanks to all the mods working tirelessly in the background. Don't forget to smash that like button for us if you enjoy the show, or even the dislike button. It just helps us further down the road to reach other Newcastle supporters. Don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free. We do content 7 days a week. And obviously, if you subscribe and then hit the bell, you will get all of that future content loaded, ready for your enjoyment. If you want to support us and help us grow as a channel, then you can become a supporter for a small monthly fee. That will give you a chance of winning a prize. And obviously, you've got then members-only content. Don't forget to check out our webpage as well. We've got a webpage at NUFC talk.tv for news and content. That's totally ad-free. Do it for the love of the club. So if you want to just go and spend 5 minutes and have a peruse at stuff that's happened in the past, then feel free to do so. If you've got a question for either me or Win during the show, then put a Q in front of that question. It just highlights it for us in the chat so we can store it and read it out at a later point. Apologies again for not mentioning everybody's chat, because obviously we just try and do the most relevant regarding the thing. And if you want to guarantee that mention, use the $sign. That will guarantee your message read out live on air. And obviously any members or gifted memberships will be highlighted and thanked as we go by. So how's Madeira, Win, on this fine afternoon for yourself? I know you've got some plans, so we're going to have to whiz through this because obviously Win's taken time off his holidays to come and give us some support. So like I say, we're going to try and fly through it. But just before we do get into the nooks and cranny, let's have a listen to how Win's holidays are going. Are you with me? Can you hear me, Win?
I am. Yeah. Oh, what's that? I thought you were about to. I thought you were about to do a Chris and bring something up there.
No.
I thought you had a surprise lined up for me. No, holiday is going very, very well, thank you. Yes, absolutely beautiful. But waiting for the dust. Mate. It's fortunately that there's a few little clouds have just come in the sky, which has made this balcony just about bearable, because at 10 o'clock this morning, I'm saying, no way am I going to be able to sit here for 2 hours. But it's cooled down slightly.
Yeah,
so all good here.
Brilliant. Glad you're having a nice time.
Off wine tasting and banana beer tasting, would you believe, this afternoon?
Oh, sounds absolutely fantastic. And like I say, we've got to push on because I know us coming on a bit later, just so we've got some info and we can get video rather than just script of the press conference this morning. It just makes it worthwhile, because for myself and Win, we do love to talk about content that's fact, that comes out of the mouth of Eddie, and obviously some of the journalists' content as well. And Geordie Toon for Life is. I'm going to put this one on screen because it's obviously the perfect start. And he's put down, "Afternoon, Gary. My God, some of these journalists just ask such negative questions, including Craig Hope. I didn't hear him mention civil war in his questions. I wonder why, but I knew he wouldn't." Well, exactly. There was some. Yeah, it's like I said. I mean, I'd heard in the past, and again, because I'd stepped away from Newcastle because of my career, I'd heard in the past that obviously Craig Hope had featured unkindly, if you like, towards previous managers. But I didn't realise, apart from reading, some of his content here and there, I didn't realise how bad Craig Hope could get. I mean, obviously, I subscribe to his videos. I
Well,
listen to.
hang on. Can I just put some context to that?
Yeah, go on.
Because to be fair, under Cabbage Seed, Craig Hope was the one journalist who did actually come to press conferences with the fans' concerns regarding both Bruce's tactics and Mike Ashley. He was the one journalist who did, you could say, represent us. So he gets a lot of kudos for having done that. And in fact, it was a result of that he got barred from the press room.
Yeah.
Which could have affected his career massively. So to be fair to Craig, he was the one independent journalist, if you like, who the fans had on their sides during the dark years. So I will give him that.
Yeah.
But you now start to think, was he doing that to differentiate himself from the pack and increase, obviously, his personal and his companies, the Daily Mail's viewing figures, etc.? Or did he genuinely have our interest at heart? Now, I know for a fact he's a Newcastle fan.
He's had that from day one.
And, he lives in Gosford, the same as I do. He's black and white through and through. There's no doubt about that at all. But, he's doing his job, I suppose, and trying to drum up business for his employer. Yeah, and he's doing it very well if you look at the numbers.
Yeah, but if I'm honest with you, mate, I mean, some of the comments. I mean, I'd heard, I've listened and watched enough YouTube videos over the last couple of weeks, especially obviously since the Mitchell and Eddie Howe mentions have been going and going and going. And if I'm honest with you, I always feel as though Craig Hope has got another dimension to it, and I'm not saying that he's doing it out there to try and create a problem, but to me, he always seems to have that extra. There's a dilemma. There's something underwood that's just not quite right with Craig for me when he's doing his reporting. And like I said, I have no issues with what he's put. I've told you before. I had questioned some of his content before because I'd posted on his websites and obviously on X now. And I said to him, I just think it was a little bit out of order with the way he's put it down. And I'm not saying it's written out of context. I just think sometimes, like I've often said, when you put something on paper and you read it, sometimes it can be read in a different context to how it's said. And I do find he does seem to stretch the truth a little bit rather than bang on the figures, where other journalists do, verbatim of what literally has come out. Now, obviously, we have this morning gone and checked everywhere to try and get the live interview. And obviously, it's been pre-recorded. I have got it, and I'm going to put it up on the screen now. And what we're going to do, we're going to listen to it, and then we're going to pause it at certain points, just so we've got some clarity of what's going on. And we can obviously bring the conference to you as we see it, and then obviously we can get some context to it. We can have a discussion with it.
We'll have our take on it as opposed to their take on it.
Journalists' take on it, yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, Kenny W said that he'd read a message saying that there was expects a big name leaving. Now, to be fair, mate, I think again that's just all hearsay from what's been going on and what's been rumbling in the background. I don't think there's any. Well, you'll get more content from the interview. So before I go any further, let's just get onto the interview and we'll take it literally from there. So, like I said, please let me know if you can't hear what the journalists are saying, And what we'll do there, then what we'll do, we'll listen to it, because I can turn it up a little bit in the background. And I know Chris is with us now in the background, and he can probably do some more adjustments on his side, because I've only got a minimum amount of adjustability here. But I'll try my best to have it as high as I possibly can without breaking your eardrums. So, like I say, I'll
I
do
don't think
what I
that's
can
going to
this side.
happen.
No, well, I don't want to, because
The sound is notoriously bad at these press conferences anyway.
It depends on where the mics are, because now they've got mics on all the stations, haven't they? But having watched the conference, you do have a little bit of high and low notes. So just bear with us, guys. If you do struggle to listen to the message, let us know, and we'll try and clarify it for you. So here we go.
Morning, everyone. Just a quick reminder on your microphones. Please turn them on and off after each question. Otherwise, the audio picks up every noise in the room. We'll start on Matthew.
Morning, Eddie. Have all the players that were away on international duty come back, and are they all okay and fit?
Yeah, we hope so. I think there's a few more checks to make today, but I think everyone, as far as we know, has come back and is in decent shape.
Quite a few of your players had a lot of football for their countries, and the rest of the squad were here training with you. And I think after the Spurs match before the break, you said that some weren't at optimum level of fitness. Do you feel you've made good progress in that regard over the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I feel we have. I think it's been productive for us. We gave them a period of rest, and then we started our work towards Wolves. Yeah, some good training. I've been really pleased. We had very low numbers initially. I think we had, say, 7 players. That was boosted to around 9 midway through. And then, gradually through the week, we've built our numbers up with the players returning.
Can you tell us how the new head of performance, James Bunce, is working with you in that regard when it comes to fitness levels, training, and the load that the players have?
Yeah, James is working really well, I have to say. I think he's been hugely impressive since he's come in. He's very passionate, hardworking, involved from the very start of the planning phase of training to the execution. Gives us really detailed analysis afterwards as well. So I think he's been a great addition to the team. Been very positive.
Just going to stop it there then. I must admit, from the outset, having half a team to work with, he mentioned 7 players there at one point in the training, doing some tactical work and obviously some literally physical work. Must be very difficult as a head coach to try and make something happen when you're trying to do tactics for a game coming up. What's your thoughts on a head coach's job when it comes to tactics and things like that when you've got international players away? Because we've had a few away, obviously.
Well, if the first thing there is Eddie is saying that James Bunce is very hardworking, very knowledgeable, and everything he said there was positive regarding James Bunce. Everything. Especially, we know the way Eddie's mind works. He wants diligent, hardworking people around him. And by what he's saying there, that's exactly what he's got. So any thoughts of there being a rift between him and James Bunce, I think for now at least we can just cast aside. It's non-existent. It's talk. That everything appears to be going hunky-dory. Secondly, doesn't the fact that he's only got 7 players to work with say something about our squad, which is what I've been saying, how good it is, because they're all away on international duty, playing competitive matches. And all that does is, for me, it just says, happy clapper, yes, yes, yes. But it says, what a great squad we've got when in an international international week, let's say, he's only got 7 players to work with. I just think that speaks volumes for the squad.
I agree with you. That's why I said, when you look at the amount, hence the depth of squad we've got now, isn't there though, is it? That's what I'm saying. and that's the part that I was trying to allude to the other day when we were having a chat online. Even though we have got really top end international players, the problem is when you take those international squad away, you are left with a very limited number to actually work on. And it does say that obviously going into later dates, obviously then he had 9 players to work with, and then obviously as their international games were going, more and more returned. But it just proves a point, doesn't it? What I was saying about the amount of players.
I think probably the two that returned were probably Callum Wilson and Willock. Because they've gone.
Callum Wilson hasn't trained yet. Callum Wilson hasn't trained yet. We'll come on to Callum a bit further into the interview. Willock has started.
But again, to slightly disagree with you, Gary, I want to see a situation where the calibre of players that we are bringing in to the squad are also away on international duty. I want to see him ideally having no players left to work with on international week.
Yeah, well, you're never going to get that, matey. To be fair,
well, no, yeah, but that's.
I know you don't. As a head coach for any team, the last thing you want is 15 of your players to be on international duty at any one point, because there's no point in you actually being at work. You've still got to get the team or whatever team you've got there up to point. And that's what I'm saying. What we see now with our squad is the numbers game. And when, as a head coach working with 7 players, sometimes you're just working on fitness. You just got to keep them going. And that's what he alludes to in a second. And we're going to come on to that now.
3 matches in, and it's the club's best start to a Premier League season for 13 years. Overall, when you look back on the first block of games, what would be your assessment?
Yeah, very good results. Really pleased with the start we've made in what, as we know, is such a difficult league. Performance-wise, we know we still haven't hit top gear. I think we've done well in different passages of each game, but not consistently through the 90 minutes. That's what we're looking to do, and we're going to have to do, because now we go into a spell where we're playing away from home, some difficult games. So we're preparing for that test.
And while you haven't lost yet, Wolves, your opponents on Sunday, haven't won, but they have had a couple of difficult fixtures, haven't they? Arsenal and Chelsea in there, and then a draw with Forest. What do you make of the way that they've changed this season, because they also lost a couple of big players in the summer?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you can look at the early results and draw conclusions that aren't accurate. I think very tough start for them. I think they played well in their last game against Nottingham Forest. That was a very even game, could have gone either way. And even the games against Chelsea was one of those freak results, because the game was tighter than the scoreline suggests, and Arsenal, they're right in the game as well. So always tough opponents, Wolves. A lot of respect for Gary and the job that he's done there, having knowing him personally. I think he's done a great job.
Thanks, Rosie.
So exactly what we said. You can't, you certainly can't judge, as you say, the painting before it's finished. And as we've said, you've got to look at the type of teams that they've been facing in the start of the season compared to us. Totally different, if you like. So maybe it's going to be a tougher one than we expect. And we were alluding to last night, where we were looking player for player, like for like. And I think we ended up with something like 3 Wolves players that would potentially come into our team to make it better. But obviously as a team, when you work it all out, what we are looking for now is to kick on. And I know, and that's a good answer to what B has just said there. You've also got to understand that we've got 5 out of the squad that are out injured, and that's very true, matey. But like I say, it's still difficult for the manager to make things work tactically if you haven't got numbers there to work with. And that's what I was more or less alluding to. But when you look at what he was saying there, obviously it'll come on to the relationship that he has with Gary O'Neill from his Portsmouth days and playing together. And there's a bit of jokey atmosphere about that. I don't see anything. I don't see anything from Eddie Howe regarding, the lads coming back from there. He said that everybody's come back and potentially he's fit and ready to go. James Bunce has obviously got a couple of more things to do with some players to be 100%. But it's about respect, isn't it? It's all about respecting the opposition. He understands that they have been hard dealt with regarding the fixture lists, and he knows history tells part of that going to Molineux and playing away from home for us over the next couple of games, well, the next 3 games is away from home. We are going to be facing it a little bit.
Yeah, there's no easy games in the Prem, none. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. I was just waiting for another reply. I would, and I was just listening to.
No. This is why I say that we had the discussion on our lineup. I think Eddie has proven already this season that he's prepared to sacrifice swashbuckling football for defensive solidity, which I think is possibly why he may go for Trips and Kelly against Wolves.
Yeah.
But time will tell. The only thing I wouldn't do is go with Longstaff for Tonali. I'll be most upset if I have.
Yeah. Brant's put down, I just want to see our best players playing their best and get a win. That would bring me some more confidence going forward. And I think you're absolutely right, buddy. We all said that, we've got 3 decent results. We're not playing well. But, if you don't continue to play well, then them results aren't always going to go in your favour. Carlton said the same. Just let them play football. That's when we are at our best. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But so let's go back into the press conference.
Nick, it's Sky Sports.
Yeah, Eddie, you just touched on Gary O'Neill there. You were Portsmouth teammates, weren't you? And there's obviously a cross-reference with different spells in charge of Bournemouth. What do you make of the job he's done so far at Wolves?
Yeah, very good. I mean, I think teammates is a loose term because I was always injured and he was always playing. So I was watching him play. And I admired him as a player. I thought he was very, very good technical player. A lot of respect for him. And it's been great to see his coaching journey because slightly different to mine. He's been thrust into a very high level of coaching and he's taken to it superbly well. He's a real thinker of the game. And I sort of knew that as a teammate. Very deep guy, cares about the game, really tactically astute. So we'll be ready for a difficult challenge.
Lewis Hall, man of the match display for England under 21s at the start of the week. Where do you think he's at in terms of his professional development, Eddie? And obviously, does he come into your thoughts on Sunday? Yeah,
he comes into my thoughts, of course. I'm really pleased with his development since he's been with us. I think he's growing and building in confidence all the time. And I think you can see that from his early displays this season. He's playing with an assuredness and a confidence that goes with his technical ability, and his robustness is improving as well. So very happy that he's gone away and had his first starts for England under 21s and performed really well.
And Sandro Tonali as well, Eddie, obviously 180 minutes for Italy, but he's only just back from his ban. Fitness wise, is there any concern there about maybe a bit of early burnout? How are you managing that situation?
Burnout after not playing for so long. Yeah, I mean, I was pleased to see him play. Firstly, I think those games would have done him the world of good, and he's performed well and part of a winning team as well. So great for Sandro. I'm sure he's in a really good place. But it's early steps for him. It's the first few weeks back. We're delighted that he's available.
Just touching back, rewinding briefly, given what happened on transfer deadline day as well, Eddie, the disappointment of not being able to get those marquee signings in. Has there been a further conversation with, fellow staff about what's needed now going forward in terms of, that togetherness and unity, planning for what needs to happen in further windows, and are you all on the same hymn sheet?
Yeah, no discussions yet towards January. No further discussions on anything. It is about unity and it is about coming together now and making sure we focus on this time at the moment. For me, is all about the games and trying to get results.
Thanks, Nick. Andy?
Right. So, a couple of things I suppose we can look at there. Obviously, he knows Gary O'Neill from his Plymouth days. He makes a little bit of a joke about him obviously watching Gary O'Neill play because he was always injured. Maybe that's the reasons why he picks or wants to play or certainly pick players that have been injured in the past because he was glass himself. Oh, who knows? That's a bit of tongue-in-cheek, guys. Don't take that to heart. But it's really good for me to see Eddie look at his oppositional manager, and yes, he hides him in good stead. He's obviously totally different managerial career to what Eddie has, coming in from lower teams and moving up. I mean, obviously Gary O'Neill has been pushed into the Premier League management situation, and he's hit the ground running to a degree. Yes, he's not going to set the world alight, but he's obviously a new manager trying to find his way, and tactically he's very astute. He knows that. We've seen that in the past, and obviously Dave has even mentioned that last night. Who was obviously the Wolves fan that came on our show last night and was giving us a little bit of background about where Wolves are. And I suppose there's still a lot of question marks about Gary O'Neill's management and how he's going to improve, but he certainly knows how to put a team out there. Unfortunately, he seems to be a little bit short on certain positions, the same as we are. But regarding, like I say, tactician-wise, he seems to come over as being able to do a job and have a little bit of knowledge in how coaches now work. Obviously, there's a lot of difference from playing the game to actually coaching the game. So it looks like he's on a similar keel to Eddie Howe. It also comes across obviously well about the players that have been away. We said again, look how Hall's played for the under-21s with 2 assists, played really well. Very attacking mindset. We didn't see much of him in the defensive areas during his time away, but literally did really well in the offensive areas. Like I say, gaining the 2 assists, but it was just his overall gameplay, his movement, and everything else, linking up with the midfield and making himself available. So he's obviously come back into the fold, very positive. And obviously Tonali. I mean, the comment about early burnout was a bit of like tongue in cheek, and I love that because obviously it just shows you that there's a little bit of camaraderie behind the scenes, and it's not as tense as we're all making it out to be. But what I also like to like about what he said about Tonali is, he's watched the 2 games, and that was fundamental in my eyes. He's watched the 2 games, he's watched how this lad's playing, and obviously he will have some idea of where and how he will benefit us going forward, and I think that's what it's all about for a head coach. It's all about the eye candy and what he sees to try and infiltrate him into a tactic that will dominate. And like I said, for me, the areas of concern will be the midfield, especially against Wolves, because we know the Brazilian side of things. We know they're very technically good. We know there's going to be a lot of high intensity in that midfield, and it's going to be all about the second ball. And the one thing that we've criticised Newcastle on this season has been distribution. We don't seem to be able to, pass 3 or 4 times correctly without losing the ball, and I think we've got to be better at that. And I'm hoping to see that, on Sunday when we get a chance to play against Wolves. It's good the fact that obviously he's talking about Tonali in that vein. It's good to say that he's watched all of Tonali's game. Do you think there's a chance of him being included?
Being included, I think there's no chance that he won't be included. It's a question of whether he starts or not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Included in the first 11.
Yeah. Well, for me, if Eddie's seen him performing, and if he's watched both games, which I'm sure he has, then he's going to see what he does. He does not lose the ball, and he's got a pass in him. So, he's got to start. He's got to start because we cannot keep losing possession in midfield the way we have been doing. We've got out of jail a couple of times this season, and you know you're not going to get out of jail week after week after week. So you have to keep the ball. But what was more telling for me in that passage that we've just watched was the reporter referring to the transfer window, and you know, anybody could. Craig Hope chose to spin it as Eddie Howe has not spoken to Mitchell since his interview.
Yeah.
That's the way Craig Hope chose to spin it.
Yeah.
Eddie spun it a completely different way. What he said was, no, we haven't spoken, because right now we've got to be united. And by united, what I think he means then is not so much him and Mitchell, but the players that are here now. He's not concentrating on who's coming in now. Right now, his job is to concentrate on the players who are here now, and they've got to be united going into all of the games up until January. So that is, he's saying, my emphasis is going to be on the players we've got now. Never mind about the players we might be getting. That can wait.
Yeah.
That's what Mitchell should be doing. Mitchell should be, you know, lining up potential targets for to come to Eddie and say, what about him? What about him? What about him?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I was going to come round to that after talking about the players. It was nice to say, like, you know, we have to move on now, even though we didn't get what I wanted, type of thing. But again, you look at his body language, there's no animosity there. And I always say body language is sometimes better than what what comes out of your mouth. And again, I know it must be difficult to deflect, but as you go through, you'll see what I mean about body language. So we'll go.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie is always the politician, you know. So he was asked the question about Wolves manager, and he is never ever going to say anything but positive things. Doesn't matter who it is. He's right. Not going to. That's just Eddie. That's the way he is.
Yeah. But like, obviously, there's
I'd love to continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gary O'Neill.
Yeah.
Well, Eddie.
Anyway,
when you went to the press conference this morning, were you a little bit relieved and pleased that you might not have to talk extensively about transfers for once?
No, it's always a pleasure to come and speak with you about any range of subjects. So,
moving on from the transfers, good international break. Nick's just touched upon Sandro Tonali there. His assist for Italy has gone a little bit viral on social media. I'm sure you've seen it. What did you make of it, and how much does it represent the quality of the player that is Sandro Tonali? The fact he's able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've seen before. Not that exact piece of skill, but it's typical Sandro. He has that flair and that ability to do things that can make the difference. I have to say, it was an outstanding finish as well. It was a great team move, but he has the ability, and I've always said that he's a player that we absolutely love.
It's good to see Paul Mitchell as well come out and speak to the media. What did you kind of make of it from what you have seen of the interview done with Paul, and how important is it that there is that kind of transparency as well from a sporting director of the club?
Well, I think it's really important that as you say, there is transparency from the club, and the financial situation that we have is not only discussed by me, because that, with all due respect to me, I'm not a numbers and figures guy. I'm a football man. So that isn't my field of speciality, and I don't pretend that it is. So I think it's good that we have different people communicating about those areas.
I remember you said a couple of months ago, you needed to be happy, you needed to be free to kind of do the work that you enjoy doing, which is naturally on the coaching page. I wonder kind of how you feel right now as we sit here at Newcastle United.
I feel a little bit hot under these lights, to be honest. No, I feel good. I'm very happy on the training pitch. For me, that's my, that being too soppy, that's my happiest environment. Coaching, helping the players, being with them, is what this job is all about. And then, of course, you enter sort of game day and you go into a different headspace. It's about competing and trying to win. But no, I'm enjoying myself.
I know elsewhere you've talked about the international break, the players coming back from international break. How else are Newcastle looking injury-wise? Joe Willock, for example. Bruno obviously came off at 45 for Brazil against Paraguay as well. Yeah,
we hope Bruno's okay. No physical ill effects from that game. Joe Willock's improving. Yeah, so we have seen him in training this week, albeit not full training, but he's been with the group, so positive signs for him.
So, man, thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Andy.
So there you go. So that was our first real question about obviously the Paul Mitchell coming out and speaking openly. And again, what I saw was, if you look at the first initial response, he moves his arm and he puts it down. So people are going to jump on that and say, was he uncomfortable? But he come across as saying, yes, we need transparency. We need people to be able to talk and be able to reason and give us a rationale on why we haven't moved forward. And yes, he alluded to the point that we've got PSR constraints, but it wasn't bad. There was nothing. No, I'm not going to talk about that.
No animosity whatsoever.
So from that point of view,
it shouldn't be down to me to talk about finance.
Yeah,
it shouldn't just be down to me to talk about finance. I am happiest when I'm on the training pitch doing something that I do know something about. Let other people talk about the finance if they want to. That's not my job. Perfect.
Yeah. And that's all you can ask for out of him, isn't it? It's like I said, I'm not a finance guy. I'm not a numbers and figures guy. I'm better at on the field. So I'll leave it to the guys that do know those things. Obviously, you mentioned a little bit about the return of Willock, and I don't know whether you saw that spoof. There was one of the Sky journalists. I don't know whether it was a journalist or a presenter. Put out on social media about Callum Wilson. Obviously, he's getting back into training. So obviously, we've got a new player starting for us potentially in the next couple of games, which was interesting. So it's good news about Willock. Yeah, like I said, we knew
that would be some player, by the way, wouldn't it? Callum Wilson.
If we had Callum Wilson, yeah, it wouldn't have.
Yeah, well, exactly. If you could meld all of their best qualities together, you'd have some player. Except for the injury bit, of course. You didn't want.
No, exactly, mate. And that's what I said. At the end of the day, it's great to hear that he's coming back into where he is. It's great to hear that Eddie's happy, and them are the words that he's just said. Yeah, I'm happy with doing what I'm doing. And this is going back to what Kenny, I think it was, that said about he's thinking or he's hearing that somebody was potentially moving. Well, there was headlines, wasn't there, about Mitchell not being happy and potentially not being in his position for more than 2 months, which I think at the end of the day, it's headlines, and people are going to be wanting people to click on stuff like that. Paul is. I'm just going to put Paul's message up on there. Hiya, Gary and Mighty Win. I hope Eddie picks Tonali instead of Longstaff. Longstaff is okay for backup rather than a regular first team player. Well, I think you've got.
And so say all of us.
I think when the poll went out there on X about Tonali and Longstaff, I think it was something like 93% said Tonali. So I can only assume that a lot of us want to see Tonali play on Sunday.
Nisha, BBC.
Morning,
Hi.
Eddie. Kieran Trippier was one of the players that stayed with you during the break.
Yep.
And he, there's a lot of speculation about his future over the summer and even after the window closed domestically. How has he been this week, and how do you see that battle for that right back position with Tino Livramento? Have you got even more of a headache?
No, Kieran's trained really well. I've been pleased. I think he needed a period of intense physical training, which we've given him. Very rare that we have him in these types of occasions. Usually he's away with England. So obviously he's closed that chapter in his career, but that's given him and us an ability now to work with him in different parts of his game. And of course, the physical being probably the biggest one for him currently. No, but I've been pleased with him. I think there's battle for places in. We need it in every position, not just the right back position, but that is one that will be intriguing. And of course, I'll have to make decisions on that as we go forward.
We've talked in these press conferences lots about the away form. And do you feel any closer to kind of unlocking what that block has been, with these 2 big away games coming up?
Yeah, I think it's just generally about performances. I know a lot is made of the home and away, and of course we've spoke about it internally because our record last year wasn't what we needed it to be. So it's something we're focusing on, we're trying to address. But for me, it's not so much, I don't think you can focus on where you're playing. It's about the product you produce. And there's been areas of our game that we haven't been good enough that we're working on. And I think the signs are positive early season, not necessarily, as I said, in terms of our overall performance, but certain aspects of our game, especially our defensive resilience. Early season has been very good. We needed that in the away game against Bournemouth. We're going to need it in these games coming up.
And just finally for me, how's Callum Wilson injury-wise?
Callum is, he hasn't had a setback, but he's a little bit behind where we wanted him to be. We envisaged that he might be training at this moment in preparation for the games ahead. He's not there yet. So he's probably a little bit behind where we hoped he would be.
Sorry, just to follow up, do you have any idea? Is it weeks away? Is it,
Yeah, no, there's no, as I said, there's no injury or re-injury. It's a case of it just doesn't feel like he can push that final part at the moment. So hopefully in the coming weeks he will be, but it's not going to be a long-term problem.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, that's an interesting one on obviously Callum. And before everybody jumps on Callum's back, let's just put some clarity on this. As you well know, or if you don't know, if you're a brand new watcher, my partner has just gone through spinal surgery. Now, if you look at anybody who's had whatever surgery he's had on the back, whether it's with a needle, where they've tried to resolve the disc bulge without opening the skin, you do have you tend to overprotect certain areas, especially if you're, like I say, got a back injury. And what all medical people will ask you to do is build the core muscles up to protect and support that area. Now, obviously for him, he will have had to done that gradually through a performance program where they work on certain parts of the back to build that core up. That's what my partner's having to do now through her physio, through her consultants. They put a plan together, and after that, it is a case of slowly getting to that point. Now, at the end of the day, you can, and this is where we go back to Botman. When Botman says, "I want to carry on playing," when all the specialists were telling him, "This is what I would do," and again, you go to the player, and Callum knows his body better than anybody else. And even though he will have probably been a little bit frustrated, the fact that he's quite not there, it isn't the fact that we've got a reoccurrence of an injury or anything like that. It's just, as Eddie's just said, he's just not able to push himself too much too soon. And that will be, again, something that James Bunce will have looked at, would have gone through all of the testing, and said that he's not quite at that point where you can go out onto the training field and go full pelt. So again, don't take that as a negative. That's, again, a specialist coming into the backroom staff and actually being positive, because, again, the last thing we want is for a lad who has a recurrence of injuries to go backwards rather than hopefully be there and available for the rest of our season. So that was an interesting point.
I am going to take a bit of a negative away from it, though, because we were more or less sure, counting upon the fact that we were going to be Callum for the start of the season, but going back to the close season, it was more or less always reported that he would be back after the first international break.
Yeah.
No, that's
you don't know who that's coming from. Yeah, but you don't know who that's coming
I
from.
think Eddie said that.
Yeah, but that's what I said. You know, when you look at it, after the international break could mean October, November. That's after the international breaks. And that's what I said.
Well,
With an injury. You know, I know that's what I've said. As supporters, what we do is we take everything that's heard as legit. And it's not like that in medicine. You know, and this is what I try, and that's why I wanted to come onto the show, is because, you know, we all know what it's like to have a procedure or an operation, and you will get a length of a period of time where you say, oh, it's between this time and that time. And then when somebody says to me, oh, it took me 12 weeks rather than the 8 weeks that you've had, we are all different. And anatomically, we all have the same ingredients, but we will all repair totally different. Now, when it comes to your back and the spine, when your vertebrae change, and again, you know, Callum's not a young pup anymore. There's going to be a lot more pressure on his midsection, on his core section, because of his age as well, and the amount of muscle mass that's around it. We saw him skipping; he looked absolutely fantastic. We all said, you know, he looks more forward than I expected him to be at that point if he's had some type of spinal procedure. But that doesn't, like, to me, that's not a negative. That is somebody now taking a precedent and saying, I don't want you overdoing it too soon. Where 12 months ago, before James Bunce have come in, you would have probably seen him back. And that's the difference I was trying to allude to. Where now you've got somebody that's actually taking a little bit more of a prominent look at each and everybody's individual place regarding injury, and saying, yes, you can advance to that next level. And we've already heard him mention about how professional James Bunce is in a previous question, and how he's coming there, and getting to the point where we want to keep Callum on the field of play. This is where we need to hold him back a little bit. That's all I'm saying. So for me, that was a really good point that Eddie made. Beers put down, my cousin got run over by a combine harvester. Doctor said he would never walk again. Now he dances in the tango competitions. Doctor spent too much time working on the front. Oh. I don't know whether
stage, yeah.
I tell you, I don't know whether whether to believe some of what Beer comes out with or not. Oh dear. Anyway, let's get back to it. But like I say, I think that was interesting to see where Callum Wilson was regarding his injury.
Podcasters, we'll move on to Ritz. We'll do Sundays as well. Just wary of time, so if you don't have to ask 2 and 3, 4 questions, please don't. And we'll try and squeeze as much as we can with Sundays at the end. We'll start with Damien.
Eddie, there's been a lot of talk about the changes that happened at the club over the summer. Is it the lot of a head coach that you push for as much as you can get, then whatever happens, whether your players are disappointed, you just have to get on with it?
Sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Over a transfer window as a head coach,
right? Yeah, sorry.
Do you have to push for as much as you can possibly get, and then players are disappointed, you've just got to get on with it? Is that the lot of the head coach?
I don't think it works like that these days. It may be in a bygone era. It's about collaboration and communication and talking through what we have available, what we can do, and then deciding where to go with your decision making. It's not about trying to squeeze more money, because PSR raises its head and they're the limitations that are upon us, not what someone's willing to spend. So we're in a different situation to where we would be maybe 15, 20 years ago. And it's about communicating which direction you want to go. That's the key thing, and then trying to execute and get the deals done.
And again, amid all the speculation, was there any sense in which you were unsettled at all by what went on, or is that just part of life as a head coach these days? No,
it's part of life. Whether you get a player in or not, that's part of being a manager. I've always had that. There's no guarantees to anything. You can think you're going to get a deal done and not, and you have to get on with it. And I've said all along, the squad we have is a very good squad. I love all the players we have here, and it's about getting the best out of them.
Thanks, Damien. We've got to Lee Ryder and then Jordan Cronin.
So just on that point then, Win, obviously, again, they're looking at disappointment. Were you disappointed with obviously not bringing anybody in the summer? And again, you know, what you've got there is it's exactly what you've had being a head coach or a manager, as he said there. You can only go with what you've got, and he's very happy with the squad that he's got.
No, I don't think he's necessarily saying he's very happy with the squad he's got. I think he's saying, I want to like players in, but we've got to be careful who we bring in because we've got a very good squad. And unless you're bringing somebody in who's going to improve the squad, don't bother bringing anybody in. That's the way I read it. So we have read it all along, much to the chagrin of all the doom and gloom mongers. I just think Eddie Howe has said, getting back to Gay again. If I can't have Gay, I don't want anybody else because none of the other alternatives that you're giving me there, I'm quite happy just to soldier on with what I've got. So on his head it is, and it all depends on results.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, it was more for me the fact that it's like he said he can only put forward certain players that he wants. It's up to the rest of the club then, the background staff to obviously go out there and support him. And
Can
if
we
it doesn't
afford
happen, it's like he said, we have to just get on with it. There's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
More Neddy.
Right.
Just on, the PSR thing again. We've spoke about the Newcastle tax before. Will it get to a point where you just have to kind of like learn to cope with teams putting prices up because the Man Uniteds and Man Cities of the world, I guess they've got to do that as well if they want to get players through.
Yeah, I think the Newcastle tax was definitely there for us in our first. This is just my personal experience of it. In our first year, where big takeover, big news, we come in for a player and the price doubles. But I don't think that's there anymore because I think people know the realities of our situation. We know we're not changing the market with what we're doing. We're in line with the market with everybody else. So we definitely walked away from deals early on where we felt there was a Newcastle tax. But it all depends on your conditions and what type of player you're going for. It's certainly something that we have encountered, but I think it's maybe less relevant than it was.
And just on going back to a couple of years ago, obviously getting into the Champions League, Newcastle had that brand of intensity that we all enjoyed to an extent. Are you close to getting that back now this season? And do you have to get up to those levels of sharpness again if you want to stay where you are on the table?
Yeah, I think that's the style of play that we want here. I think we want to play with a clear plan. We want the players to deliver a lot. We ask a lot of them. I think they're capable of delivering that. I think at our very best, we're a very difficult team to play against. I think we're searching for that feeling, that really good physical feeling in the early weeks of the season. I don't think we've quite seen it on a consistent basis. Some players have executed it. Some players maybe haven't yet, but I'm sure they will. And hopefully it will all come together for us.
Thanks, Lee. Jordan?
Interesting, mate, wasn't it there? Regarding the Newcastle tax, because we always allude to the Newcastle tax in every window. But he's saying it in the first window, possible, but not anymore. And it literally is just the way the obviously transfer market is these days. It's a case of everybody's got a price, and it's whether you're willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in a perverse way, you can argue that PSR and FFP have actually helped us. And that sounds queer, but just bear me out. Insofar that clubs do know now that we can't just spend whatever we want. They know, especially from the Anderson Mindy fiasco, that we haven't got the money to spend. That they can't just go asking stupid numbers because it's Newcastle. Because it's not that we can't afford to pay it; we aren't allowed to pay it. So, as I say, in a perverse way, you can argue that helps us when we're negotiating.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, PDK's here asking his winner mind reader always knows what Eddie Howe is thinking. Well, But again, it's about opinions, isn't it? You know, you look at it and you say to yourself, is if I do this way, or this is how I would look at bringing players in and stuff like that, and like you know, the Connors put down, you know, why do we still have the likes of Matt Targett, who's on £100,000 a week? And it's not about being a mind reader. It's about like
that's why we've still got Matt Targett.
Yeah, because he's on too much money.
That's why we've still got Matt Targett, because he's on 100 grand a week.
Yeah, and that's what I said. It's not about us saying, you know, well, this is how we do things. It's about like having an understanding, and this is why we are always, I suppose, replying to what Eddie Howe has said, and trying to get some idea of what you think about as a head coach and how you deal with disappointments and everything else. And all we try and do is bring in an opinion on what he's saying. None of us will ever know.
I'm not trying to say that I can read Eddie's mind, far from it. All I'm doing is putting my interpretation on the words that he actually says.
Yeah. I mean, Chris has said
the fact that I put a positive interpretation on the things he says, where other people choose to put a negative interpretation on what he says, that's down to individuals, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris has put down, but you have said we do have the money to spend.
We have got the money to spend.
Well, I think it's like he said.
But we would be taken for a ride.
Yeah, and there's a difference, isn't there? And that's what I think he was alluding to there, was the fact that every player has a price, and it's whether you're willing to pay that price, isn't it? And that's where, right. Like I said, we, you know, having now heard Paul Mitchell say, you know, we put in our final price 2 weeks before the deadline, and then it was up to, or trying to see if Crystal Palace then would sway towards us, knowing full well that we're not going to come in with any further developments regarding that price. Yes, we came back with the structure of a deal, which isn't obviously what Crystal Palace was looking for, because they moved the goalpost slightly the other way. But it also meant that we're not going to be taken for a ride. And I think, like I say, you know, as the head coach, as Eddie's just said, you just have to deal with that. There's nothing you can do. You just have to deal with it and move forward.
Eddie, can I just check Emil Kraft? I think he withdrew from the Sweden squad. Is he okay for the weekend?
Yeah, he's been nursing a problem. We have seen him in training. He missed the training sort of towards the back end of last week and the early sessions of this week. But he's joined in the last couple of days, so we're hopefully be okay.
And for good, well, as good as Emil has been, how much have you missed Fabian Schär and that sort of ability on the ball? And has that been part of the reason why you haven't maybe had the possession that you would have wanted in the sort of first opening 4 games?
Yeah, I think definitely Fabian, his ball playing ability is unquestioned, and we have missed that aspect of his game. But I think Emil's done an outstanding job. I mean, I can't compliment him enough, especially when you consider that it's not his first position. He's been playing centre half now for a while. We started that work with him at the sort of back end of last season, where we saw that being a position that he could play and play very well. He did against Manchester United last year in the Carabao Cup, in the game that we won there, and he was magnificent that night. So it's an area that we see Emil maybe developing more as his career goes on with us. But having that dual role is key, as you know, similar to say qualities that Lloyd Kelly has, where he can play both positions. But Fabian's unique, and of course we've missed his outstanding qualities.
Just one last one as well. Lewis Miley, how is his recovery going, and when can you expect him to be back?
Yeah, he's doing well. He's back on the grass. It's great to see him with his boots on. So that was the first time, I think, last week. He's on track, I'd say, for the 3 months that he was given initially. I don't see any big change from that currently.
Okay, we've got some Luke, Chris, and then Craig.
So yeah, another interesting part was obviously he's been delighted with what Kraft's done, but obviously there's no replacement for Fabian Schär's ability with the ball at his feet, and I think that is really cool regarding that. But it's lovely to hear him highlight Kraft doing what he's done, as he's not a specialist in that position. More like Kelly, where he's adaptable and he likes them style of players, because that's what he said before. He wants players to be comfortable in certain positions and happy to do that. But obviously, it's really good news, the fact that we've also got Lewis Miley, that's obviously got his boots back on, and he's starting to use the hard yards now and get closer to returning, which should be in October. So that was good news. Anything you want to point out on that one, mate?
No, I think that was all fairly self-evident, fact-based, so not a lot to dissect, but it just, the only thing I would say is that he said the 3 months that he was originally, that was the original prognosis, that he's on track for that, and it was something similar which he said about Callum Wilson.
Yeah.
That we talked about earlier on before. So Eddie was on record more or less as saying that he thought he would be back fit. Thought he would be back fit after the international break, which he's later than. So with the James Budd's influence, don't be surprised if Lewis Miley might take a bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the problem is, if he has had a plate and screws, don't forget there's not much muscle between bone and tissue. So sometimes you can feel a screw actually on the surface of your skin. Now, obviously, a lot of the new boots these days are skin tight. So you may start to feel, or you may get a little bit of soreness around the site. So, like I say, this is what I'm saying. These are all little things that we actually don't take into consideration when it comes to operations and procedures. Things like that can delay coming back because, again, it's a reaction from the procedure that he's had. And that's what I said. I'm hoping, Eddie's hoping, and that's all you can do. It's hope that these things, there's a few screws loose in here. You're absolutely right, Mighty. There's more than a few. Crack on.
Yes, please.
Joe Willock, is he back? And what does he bring you as a manager and a team?
Yeah.
Can I just stop there? If you hear that knocking noise, that's a journalist that's banging his pen off his pad, because obviously, as he's asking questions to Eddie, he's just nervously tapping his pen on the pad, and it drives me insane when I listen to that. So please don't think it's me or Win, because I'm sure there'll be somebody jumps out in a minute and says, "What's with that tapping noise?" Now you know what it is.
He, as I say, he has trained. He hasn't trained fully, but he's trained with us. He's done parts of the session. He's a big player for us. When we started the game against Nottingham Forest, and you think we started electric, Joe scored a great goal. The team looks really good, and then he goes off. And I thought our performance suffered from him exiting the pitch. He brings that energy, that pace into our midfield. Definitely got an eye for goal. He's got a creative streak. And yeah, he's a real energizer as well. He's got a positive outlook on life and football. So we've definitely missed him.
An international break is often a time for a manager to reflect. We've talked a lot in this room about what happened in the summer, the changes at boardroom level, what failed to happen, what did happen in the transfer window. When you sit there now, how are you feeling about things, and are you looking forward rather than back?
Well, it might be an opportunity for you to reflect. It's certainly not necessarily for me. I think for me, my eyes have been on Wolves since the Tottenham game finished. My eyes have been on the training. Getting the best out of every single player that we were left with. No part of me sort of looks back to the transfer window and all the stuff that obviously you guys write about on a daily basis, and I understand why. But for me, my job is always about the future and tomorrow. And so transfer-wise, it's January. All those discussions haven't taken place yet, but football-wise, it's on the next game.
Chris?
More Eddie, sorry, just another one.
Do you want to go on anything that he's just said there, Win? Anything that
I agree with every word he said. He is concentrating on a match by match basis, which is exactly what I want him to do.
Yeah. Lee McFarlane.
He said to the journalist, "You were going right about what the hell you like. As far as I'm concerned, the transfer window is water under the bridge. If you want to carry on playing with that, carry on playing with it. I'm concentrating on the matches that we've got coming up."
Yeah, exactly. Colton, it's
No,
Botman
he's spot
injury or
on.
red carded. Colton's put down his Botman injury or red carded. No, it's Shah who got red carded, buddy. Botman's out with an ACL injury. And Lee McFarlane says that audio system they have installed is still wonky. Crikey. They cannot get a note right at the minute, can't they? No, not at all, matey. Like I said, a lot of the noise in the background and the interference is awful. And I think, like I said, in a minute, it seems to go really quiet. So maybe that's the reasons for the sound going lower. It could be the fact that they turned the mics off because of all the feedback that you could hear. But in a way, I agree with you. It's like I said, I'm concentrating on the Wolves game. I'm not interested in what the papers write. You've got a job to do. I've got a job to do. And if I don't do it right, then you'll be writing about that as well, wouldn't you? You know. So, like I said, he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, isn't he? Regardless of whichever way you look at it. Let's get on to the next one.
On injuries, just an update on how Sven Botman and Jamal Lascelles are getting along. I know the timescale was somewhere between sort of 6 and 9 months. I think we're at the early stages of that now. So just when do you expect to see them back?
Yeah, I think both players shown a great attitude to their injuries. Long road ahead for both of them. They're sort of in the middle of that time now. Both seem a lot more positive, and I think it's natural when you first have the injury and you sort of have the operation and you're in the early stages, you can't do a lot. There's a feeling of frustration and I've been there as an athlete. It's a difficult moment, but when you start to do more and you get the heartbeat going and you get the physical work started, you feel so much better about yourself. They're currently in slightly at different stages. I say Sven's probably a little bit ahead of Jamal just in terms of their rehabs, but both players committed to their work and doing great.
And just on the away form, you mentioned that it's about performance more than anything else. Do you think there has been a mental aspect to that as well? I mean, at St James's Park, obviously the form has almost been consistent, but do you think there has been a potential mental effect of going away from home?
Well, I think it's more the inspiring aspect of St James's Park is so big for us. The environment is so good. It's so weighted in our favour. The supporters have been incredible. That's elevated our levels without a shadow of a doubt. And then you go away, the environment's different. The away support has been incredible. We need to reward that away support with more wins. A lot of that, I think, comes down to defensive performance. If you're not conceding goals and you're in games, I think we have the quality to take games in any situation. So I think if we defend well first, I think that will give us a great chance.
Thanks, Chris. To Craig and then Joe.
Morning, Eddie. In
Morning.
Paul's interview last week, he was very complimentary.
I'm not going to go on to that just yet. I'm just going to go on to obviously what you're saying about, because I think.
But there we have it in a nutshell.
What's that?
Yeah, there we have it in a nutshell. It's all down to defensive performances, because if you're defending well, you've got a chance to win.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we were saying. He seems to have changed that press. Now, whether that was because Shaw was missing, and we had obviously a little bit of a makeshift defence, as we've alluded to, we don't know. With the setup that he's used in the previous couple of games, or a few games, I should say, or is it literally just the fact that Amrit put down there? When Sven's back, it's going to be a huge boost to the whole of the team, I think. And it's just creating that depth, as we keep saying. But obviously, it's nice to hear that the two lads are on the right track with Lascelles and Botman, because, like I said, it's a shame that Lascelles got a 12-month extension and he's going to miss 3/4 of the season because of this injury. And it'll be it'll be a shame for him, if it is his final season, not to be involved in some way or another. But this is where, obviously, people are going to say, it gets a bit juicy if you want to put it in headlines.
About you in terms of
well, hopefully, both of them.
You could hardly hear him. So sorry, mate. I'm just going to start that question again, because you could hardly hear him in the background. That's why I said the mics do go a little bit low, or whether he's not talking into the mic. I don't know what it is. But you can hardly hear him. So I'm going to let you say your piece before I switch it on.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say now.
That's my job. Not yours.
No. Just roll it.
Okay.
Away support with more wins. A lot of that, I think, comes down to defensive performance. If you're not conceding goals and you're in games, I think we have the quality to take games in any situation. So I think if we defend well first, I think that will give us a great chance.
Thanks, Chris. Go to Craig and then Joe.
Morning, Eddie. In
Morning.
Paul's interview last week, he was very complimentary about you in terms of the coach and the job you've done, and said he was looking forward to building a good relationship with you. He also said the transfer strategy he walked into wasn't fit for purpose. You were a big part of that transfer strategy. What did you make of those comments, and do you agree? Was it not fit for purpose?
I think a few things on that. I think very, very proud of every single player that we signed in that period. I think it's very easy to look back at any transfer window and sort of make a judgment on the players that you've signed 3 years down the line. But you have to go back to actually the situation we're in when we're in those moments where you're in the relegation zone and you're trying to recruit players. That's not an easy thing to do. But you're also recruiting not just for the short term, but for the long term. And I think when you look back, I think that work was good because our objective was to stay in the league. So I'm not going to critique every signing, but I'm very, very proud of the body of work that we did and the players that we have now from the legacy of those transfer windows, and we love them to bits. So I think it's about actually when you're in that moment, the decisions that you made, and I think everyone can hold their heads up very high.
Paul.
So I'm going to stop there because obviously there's another one. So he didn't mention Mitchell whatsoever. Obviously, he just went on to talk about. Yeah, that's what I said. Craig Hope was obviously trying to pull a little bit of information out of him about that. But obviously, he did exactly what he set out to do, and that's obviously say that he was very proud on some of the lads that he's brought into the club. They've all worked extremely well, and he's also emphasised the fact that when we started to bring these players in, how precarious it was as a team for being relegated. And the fact that some of the decisions that you make when you're under pressure from relegation is totally different from a team that's constantly winning the Champions League or winning the Premier League. The pressures that you're under are totally different. Also, the financial side of it is totally different. And it was, I suppose, it was a nice time to come in as a manager on the takeover because there was quite a little bit of a purse there for him to go and pull in. But again, as fans, I don't think there's very few, and I suppose some people will criticise the likes of Wood, Chris Wood, that come in and obviously went virtually the following season out on loan and then was shipped off to Forest. Yeah, exactly. And these are all just supporting roles, aren't they? Before they get the named players in that they want for. And again, he said about the longevity. It's not just about.
It was Craig Hope's question, and so he's effectively saying he's done the Civil War article, where he's directly said to Eddie that I've never seen them quoted, but apparently Mitchell is alleged to have said that the previous transfer strategy was not fit for purpose.
Yeah.
So Craig Hope is saying to Eddie, in the light of what Mitchell said, what do you think? And Eddie has said loud and proud there, I am very proud of our body of work that we did transfer-wise in the previous windows. And basically he's saying, you have a look at the players that were signed and who we've got on our books now, and you tell me how it's a bad body of work, how it is, quote unquote, not fit for purpose. Because obviously by the results that were achieved, it was fit for purpose.
Yeah, but again,
so I think he's just he's batting it straight back at Craig Hope, saying, "Are you saying it wasn't fit for purpose?"
No, but I do think it's going forward. It's not fit for purpose because, like we said, you can't just keep spending money because you've reached the ceiling now, and because we haven't got the sellable assets, it's impossible for us to keep spending the money. We, if you like, window in, window out, of throwing 100 million down and not being, over the threshold, because that's the nooks and crannies of it. And again, I think everybody's taken this not fit for purpose as past. It's like a case of it's not about the what we've bought in. It's about moving forward. It's not fit for purpose to utilise what we've done going forward now, because we can't do that. We're not a big enough club to do that. And that's why I said I do think we twist on words, even as fans listening to it and reading it. A little bit, I disagree with you there saying he's battened that back. Yes, he's proud of the lads doing it, but I also disagree with the way Craig Hope has put it forward. Again, the not fit for purpose. I think it's about us moving forward as a united, and that's like him and the coaching staff have got to do a job on the field, and Mitchell and the backroom staff have got to do a good job in the scouting, and only time will tell. You can't judge that painting before it's finished. Josh has said, agree, Gary. To me, I think Mitchell's comment was about the future, not insulting what we did prior to the summer window. Yeah, that's how I look at it. Again, I'm now a mind reader, but I do think we see things are written down out of context a lot of the time. So this is another Craig's question.
Also said that you only played a supporting role this summer, which would give the impression that it was you and others still sort of leading the transfer process. Was that the case?
I don't think it's right for me to sort of make individual comments in reply to Paul's press conference. I don't think that's going to help our current situation. So I think it's best for me to focus on the future.
And just lastly, have you spoken to Paul since last week?
No, I've had no contact from Paul, but I don't think that's unusual. We're got different jobs to do. I'm focusing on the football and the team, and he's obviously focusing on his role.
Thank you.
So that was interesting for me, because when obviously Craig Hope again trying to stir up the pot by yeah, that's right, trying to give again, trying to get out information that he can put in the press to get clicks. It doesn't need it. It actually doesn't need it. It's got nothing to do with the current situation. For me, it's all about, like, Mitchell's come out with a statement. I do believe Eddie was pulling the strings because he didn't say no there. So for me, that was a case of, I ain't going to say anything because all I'm going to do is upset a few more people. So I'm not saying a thing. And by not saying a thing, he's more or less holding his hand up and saying, yeah, I was involved. Because if he wasn't involved, he could have just said, no, I wasn't involved. It was somebody else that was involved.
No, well, of course he was involved, because Mitchell only came on board for the last 7 weeks.
That's right. And that's what I said. This is where for me, I do think that Eddie does stir up a little bit more of the hornet's nest than needed to, rather than putting it to bed and just saying, yeah, I was involved this time, because obviously we knew that he was just through the doors and he was more of us in support of what we were trying to put down in business terms. So that's what I said. To me, there is a little bit of to and fro in between the two of them. We understand that, but in any good business, you get that. If you just go in there as a yes man and agree to everything that's going on behind the scenes, and as we've said before, it's only going to be this guy that gets the sack. Mitchell could be in the job for years to come down the road. So he's got to be the one who brings in the results. So yes, there has to be a little bit of information going backwards and forwards. And it's like I said, I don't know how much conversations these guys have. I'd be very interested to think that, if Eddie spends most of his week in Benton and Mitchell spends most of his week at St James's Park in the offices, there may be the odd phone call, but I wouldn't have thought that they actually go out for, Costa Coffee for a drink and talk about, what's going forward, because at this present moment in time, the window's gone. There is nothing for them to talk about anymore. It's all about.
Well, I think there is kind of fuel to the fire insofar that, have you spoken to Mitchell since the window closed? No, I haven't.
Yeah.
So that to me would be slightly unusual. You would think they would have spoken on some matter. So the one thing it shows, It shows that they're not personal friends, shall we say.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. You can't say to me that they haven't had any communication, but I don't expect them to go to Costa Coffee. That's exactly what I've just said. To me,
But the point is, Eddie said specifically, we've had no communication. Have you spoken? He was asked the question, have you spoken to Mitchell since the transfer window closed? And he said, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, he didn't. He said, since the interview.
Yeah. But that's what I said. It's like I said, I think if
he said no, but that's not unusual.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying to you is, if I'm honest, I do think Eddie does poke the bear as well, going backwards, because like I said, he makes it sound as if there's a bigger rift by saying we have no communication. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Lee McFarlane, I think the journo asking Mitchell said the not fit for purpose in the question 2 kind of loaded it. Yeah, that's what I said. There's definitely a lot more loading questions, especially from Craig Open. He's also put that in the paper today, or certainly on X. He'd made some comments towards it. Ron has put down he was on board with Amanda, was taken away with Mitchell coming. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. You can't tell me that this lad isn't involved in any of the conversations that has gone on in the past, because he would be. It doesn't matter where you are regarding the structure of a club. You do hear, and whether you hear it directly from the CEO or whether you hear it from your line manager, you will hear the information filter through, because that's what happens in all jobs. It happened in mine, and I'm sure it happened in yours, Win. You do get the information coming down to you. Now, you may not directly go back with a question to that individual, but you would obviously have a comment to say regarding how you feel about it. And that's what I said. I do find between the two of them, they are very much on opposite sides of a room, and one's saying very little, the other one's going blah. And that's what I said to you before, because I don't think Mitchell comes with a filter, unlike Eddie. I just think it's the way they both, I suppose, egos, and I think Chris has mentioned something about egos. You've got to be blind not to see there's a massive battle of egos. There you go. Yeah, I suppose it does work that way. You know, you've both got a job to do, and you've both got to get out and do it, and you'll both be scrutinized if you don't do it. So let's just go on to the next one, because I know time's against you, buddy.
Joe.
Hi, Eddie. Anthony Gordon played, again, a big role for England. What have you made to his start of the season? Obviously, there was speculation surrounding his future. What have you made to his first 4 games with Newcastle this year?
I think Anthony is, well, firstly, I think he's in a great place after the 2 England games. I thought he performed really well. I was watching totally biased towards him and hoping he had, really good games and impacted. And I know he's very proud to play for his country. So I know that those 2 games would have meant a lot to him, and the trust given to him by the manager was great to see. So I think he'd come back in a great place. And I think he probably needed the games to build his fitness levels up. Again, very difficult summer for him, where finished the tournament with England, very minimal training before he's come back to us. So I hope we see a much fitter Anthony in the coming games.
And Gordon is part of the front 3 with Isak and Harvey Barnes as well. They started against Tottenham. Is that one that you can see going forward? Because it's certainly one that supporters have, got excited about.
I think we've got good options. I think, of course, that game was bespoke to Tottenham, and so that was a sort of a reshuffle on system and personnel. This game against Wolves will be different, so we'll see what we do there.
Thanks, Joe. Go to Simon Bird and then to Kieran. Simon.
Hi, Eddie. Last week, Paul Mitchell also said that the scouting system wasn't fit for purpose. Why do you think he said that, and did you agree?
I think that's for Paul to answer. I don't know if I can answer for him. The scouting structure was there, and whatever you think about the structures, I thought the results were very good.
From your answers to Craig, it seems that you're kind of unhappy with some of the things that were said last week, and you don't want to respond to them publicly. Will you respond to them privately? Is that possible?
I think you're slightly putting words into my mouth there. I just don't think it's the time or the place to do that.
Yeah, one of the.
I'm just going to stop it there, and this is another thing that gets me. Where's the football in all this? This is for a press conference for the upcoming Wolves game, and all they're trying to do is create more of an issue than there actually is. And this lad has come out and said, like, you were a little bit, abrupt with Craig's question. Don't want to answer it. Will you answer it privately? I mean, what the? I mean, where is he coming from with that?
Like I say, you make of it what you will. The bottom line is the hierarchy will decide whose ego, which ego has landed. If they can't kiss and make up or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I just find absolute nonsense some of this stuff.
Why these so-called Newcastle fan journalists just trying to make trouble when they're in any trouble there?
Exactly. I mean, we started off talking about Wolves and the opposition and how we're building tactically and everything else, and how difficult it's been. And now all of a sudden it's a one-on-one thing, between Eddie Howe and Mitchell. And this is what drives me insane when it comes to press conferences.
And me.
Let's crack on.
One of the questions some of the fans said, they're reading stuff which says there's a civil war internally within the club. Do you want to respond to that and say that that's not true, or elaborate at all? It does seem there's tension and there's a narrative surrounding the club at the minute, which is kind of unsettling.
Well, the civil war stuff, absolutely not in my experience. But I'm cocooned in my work and absolutely focused on the players and the training. And I know you're bored of that answer from me, but that is what I do every single day that I'm here. So I don't involve myself in politics. For me, this job is very much about the players that we have.
I'm going to be bothered with all this politics.
Proud every time we play. Everything else around that, I try not to get involved in.
Okay, Kieran.
So there you go. Civil war. I mean, how bloody stupid is that question? If I'm honest with you, I mean, why would you even put the word war into it when it's just obviously opinion?
Well, because Craig Howe put it in his article, didn't he?
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Civil war of the two.
But people obviously just run with it, don't they now? And it's like I said, he's pushing and pushing and pushing to get headlines, and it's just been, not in my eyes, and again, it's not for me. Civil war's just not there on my side. I want to concentrate on the football, and that's what journalists should bloody allow them to do. Is talk about
the only thing I would reiterate is what I said at the start of the show, that no club has ever been successful if the whole enterprise wasn't united and all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, but you're not going to agree on everything, are you?
No.
I mean, we don't. As a group of friends, as a group of fans of Newcastle United, in this group, we all have an opinion on certain things. We're not going to agree with everything. That's what it's about. It's about brainstorming. It's about getting the best out of the show, the best out of the guys involved in the background, and obviously giving our opinion on what's being said out there. And I just disagree entirely about this idiotic journalism.
All I would say is that if there is all this conflict going on, which I'm not convinced that there is, there's obviously a little bit of tension there. But it does need sorting. And the hierarchy, you've got to come out and say, right, we're on his side or his side, or there isn't anything at all going on. This is not, Eddie Howe should not be answering these questions in a press conference. This should be put to Darren Eales, who is the only guy responsible. He should be asked these questions and said, what are you going to do about it? And he can then turn around and say, do about what? There's nothing to do anything about. Everything is hunky-dory.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's the end of the matter.
That's the end of it. Exactly. And that's what I said. I do think there's issues on either side because he's not ruling it out and the other one's saying there is, and that's what I said. to me, and Chris is, is it the nail on the head, I suppose, with egos. They're both doing their own jobs in their own areas of work, and let it go. You're never going to be friends with everybody, are you? That's fact. You never, like I say, you're never going to be everybody's.
But the eventual outcome will always be better if you are.
Well, yes, but like I say, you can't always just be a yes man win, can you? That's what I'm saying. At the end of the day,
I'm not saying be a yes man. I'm saying you come to constructive, joint decisions.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think Eddie sometimes has to come away from this. I'm going to hide where I feel, and he's just got to go. There's nothing for me. Blah 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 blah. That's the end of it. And like I said,
well, to be fair, that is exactly what he did in Germany.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what he did in Germany.
It doesn't put.
And the fact that he's still here means that he has received assurances to say that he can continue working the way he likes to work, because that's exactly what he said in Germany.
Yeah, I know, but like I just said to you, it doesn't hurt him coming out and saying that he was more involved in the transfer saga this window than Paul Mitchell. That's all I'm saying. Because that would have ended everything. It would have put everything to bed. And that's what I said. I do blame both of them for not actually being open and honest. I do blame Mitchell for having no filter. I do blame Eddie for holding everything into his chest, because when you watch him,
there's the difference. There's the difference, Gary. You blame both of them. I blame neither of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because if they both had common ground, for either of us, we'd be a happier channel, wouldn't it? That's what I'm saying. And you wouldn't have this bloody negativity going into the next game. That's how I look at it.
Exactly. I want the negativity out of the way.
Yeah, totally.
Morning, Eddie. The chairman was at the game a couple of weeks ago. I was just wondering what you took from the meeting you had with him after the game, and you feel the ambition's still very much there from the top.
Yeah, it's always very. The chairman's always very engaging. He's
So that was really low. Like I said, for this one, I can hardly hear it myself, but it was about the ambition of the club, about the chairman, ambition of the club, and everything else. So I'm not going to go verbatim on what he said, but that's more or less how he's saying. After the meeting last week, how's the ambition of the club?
A really positive guy, so I think he always wants to try and help affect us in a good way. He's very keen to communicate and help. So yeah, nothing but positives. Of course, helped by the result, and everyone was in a good mood. So good start to the season. So it was very positive.
Some of the biggest signs have actually come from overseas, but with the crisis for domestic players now, with the rules you have, do Newcastle have to go more global?
I think it's a mixture. I think it's never about the market. It's always about the player. So we'll always assess, or we have historically always assessed the player first, and then of course has to be attainable, has to be at the right price. But it's never about looking at one market and going, we're going to sign a player from this market only. It's about the positional need, and then trying to identify the right player regardless of where they play. I don't know if that will change in the future, but that's how we've done it.
Thanks, Kieran.
So that's an interesting one, you see. So what he's just alluded there, and again, this is my opinion on what he's just said, because I only caught the odd word from what the interview or the journalist, whoever he was, said, and it was about the ambition of the club with the chairman's meeting, and then he goes on to the transfer window, and it sounded much like, what type of players individually you were looking at. Was it a group of players? Was it individuals? And so on and so on. Now, obviously, what Eddie's just said there, he looks at the player, and then as individuals, they don't look at groups of players. They have obviously highlighted an individual, as we heard with the likes of Gahey coming in. And is that a negative win? Not having a plan B, C, D? Because to me, having a big fish in a small pond sometimes comes.
I don't think he was saying that. I don't think he was saying we've got no plan B, plan C. He said we'll look at the position, we'll look at the thing, That's the way. How much can we afford? That's the way we've done it in the past. And if you look, we've been quite successful. What it's going to be like going forward, I don't know. So that was a very interesting statement.
That's what I said. But like I said, it looks like they look at a very small group of individuals, don't they? That's what I'm trying to say. Rather than maybe the way Mitchell's come in and wants a pool of individuals. That's where we get this seesaw effect coming from, because they both work individually totally different.
Again, I don't, right. First of all, Paul Mitchell's job is to look intelligently at a far bigger pool of players, analytically and in every which way, than Eddie would could conceivably be able to do whilst doing his job as well. So that's what the director of football's job is.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie, when he probably at Bournemouth in the early days here, didn't have anybody in that position. He simply had a scouting system who would report to him and say, I've seen this kid, he looks good, da-di-da-di-da. Eddie might know some of them, probably look up a couple of them. Paul Mitchell's job is to be far more proficient and efficient at doing that. To then be able to go to Eddie and say, right, you are looking for a right winger, I found him, and him, he's got this, that, the other. And then they come to a joint decision.
Yeah. I mean, Search is just put there.
I can just see it improving, because the pool of players that we're going to be able to look at is going to be bigger than what one person or three people or whatever can actually look at. We've brought in all these statisticians now, which is the way forward. So that is going to be different. And Eddie's going to have to take that on board, embrace it. And I'm sure he will. He's intelligent enough to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Search, I was just coming to that. Search just put here that it's Howe was saying that they don't look at a small pool or just one market league. That's what he's just said. Now, obviously, I hadn't heard that correctly, if that's what he's just said, because to me it was more the fact that they're looking at, and you've said in the past, Eddie's come out and said in the past where he wants only players that will improve the first 11, which is very difficult. So obviously you've got two individual minds looking at the same outcome, but you're working at it in a different way. And I think that's where we have a little bit of not clear ground, because it's like I say.
Well, here's where the potential conflict could be, right? Eddie, if you like, is into my way of thinking, which is we've got limited money, so I want to spend that money on players who are going to make an immediate impact and improve the first team. Part of Paul Mitchell's brief, which is proven to be very good at over the years, is to identify young talent who can come in and can be developed into those positions.
Yeah.
So let's, for example, just say that Paul Mitchell had gone to Eddie with a couple of young centre-backs in the French league, just for the sake of argument, who Eddie wasn't aware of, didn't know that much about. But let's say him and Paul Mitchell have had the conversation. Could he come into the first team right now? And let's say Paul Mitchell has been honest and said, look, he probably couldn't come into the first team right now and improve it. But what he could do is improve in the next 6 months and then be more than capable of doing that. And so Eddie, who wants to look after the results, is saying, no, well, if that's the case, I'd rather spend me money on somebody who's going to improve the first team right now. And I think where we are right now as a club, moving forward with the current limited budget that we've got, I prefer Eddie's approach to Paul Mitchell's long-term approach. And that doesn't mean that either of them are wrong. It just means that Darren Eales, for example, has to decide and has to justify to PIF why he is backing one option or the other, one of which could result in us getting Champions League this season, and one of which will result in us not getting Champions League for a couple of seasons, and thereby probably losing Isaac, Bruno, and starting completely afresh again.
Yeah.
So that's not something that Eddie Howe should be having to bother waste his time on now. That's a question that should be for Darren Eales and Paul Mitchell and the PIF to decide. Eddie Howe is interested in one thing and one thing only, and that is results on the pitch. And for me, that's exactly the way it should be.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, I think that could be a little bit more transparent. Eddie Howe could be a little bit more transparent. That's what I'm going to say. What is
I'm not in such a rush now because I'm not in such a rush now because we've missed the bus anyway. So my good lady ex-wife has just brought me a gin and tonic, so we've got plenty of time now.
Well, I was just going to say, I was just looking at the time. I thought you had to go at 2:30.
I should have been away at 20 past.
Bless you. Yeah, honestly, you could have just gone. You didn't have to stay along. But you know me, mate. I am.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Just clarify, because I'm not 100% sure. What is Howe's job at the club? Isn't he assistant head of recruitment or something like that?
Andy Howe.
Andy Howe, yeah. Eddie Howe's nephew. Isn't he head of recruitment or assistant head of recruitment or something like that?
He's one under Steve Nixon. So Steve Nixon is chief scout, and Andy is one below him. I'm not sure what his actual official handle is. Okay. He's 2IC scouting team.
Fair enough. Right then, let's. It's all right. I've been. Thank you,
well done.
Unfortunately, I was just going to have a look at where they've gone to, and that's what I was looking at while you were having your little bit of a conflab. And my chat, as daft it looks, went down just as you.
Well, unfortunately, I can't help because on the mobile,
I have got them here. I have got them here, but is I've just reloaded my. That's what I was waiting to do. So the gift ones have gone to Mark Cooper, Alessandro Minetti, Japadoni, Roy Morton Trovac, Matt Thompson, and that's it. So thank you ever so much, Chris, for your donation of 5 gifts. Memberships have gone out. So again, please continue your membership once your gifted one runs out. And give
get all the benefits.
Give Chris the thumbs up and smash the like button for us if you wouldn't mind. Because that's something that we haven't done very often in the shows, and that just helps us reach further afield as a channel. I mean, like I say, there's lots, but again, thanks, Chris. There's lots out there going into going on from this. We do need a structure, and obviously it'll come in a minute about obviously getting down to business for the January window. Even though Eddie has said that they've not actually done any chatting as of yet. It won't be long before these guys get together and discuss what's happening in the up and coming months. So watch this space is what more or less they're saying.
I see an Newcastle meeting very shortly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's on the cards. I'm just going to put this up on the screen because obviously, just to help everybody remember to smash the likes for us and subscribe. We'll just continue with this interview now.
Louise, and then finish with Martin in this section.
Hi, Louise.
Imagine there's something called a bromance barometer, and with 10 is you're completely bonded, and 1 you're not that, you're a bit frosty. Where on the bromance barometer is your relationship with Paul Mitchell?
So here's another one. This is another Louise. This is the bromance question because again it goes a bit quiet. So what she's asking is, where is your bromance on the relationship between Mitchell and yourself?
I don't really understand the fascination with our bromance, but I don't think it has to be that way. I think it has to be a collaboration, and it has to be, sometimes there is moments like I fall out with Jason a lot. If you want to talk about bromances, and that's probably the closest one I've got at the club. But we fall out a lot. We have healthy debate and argument, and that's never been a problem. That's as long as it's respectful and it's for the greater cause, which is always the football club and making sure we try and get positive results. There's no issues with that. But I think the collaboration part is the key thing, and it's got to be teamwork for the ultimate aim.
I mean, in Paul Mitchell's chat with us, he said that he was actually talking to you more than his wife and talking for an hour every night. So obviously that's ended now.
Has it?
Well, it seemed like you were.
But obviously that's during the height of the transfer window, and that's natural. No, it's definitely not regular. No.
But there you go. You see, and this is what I said. Eddie Howe drops himself in the crap because if you're going to lie, you've got to have a good memory. And Eddie said before he hadn't got anything to do with the transfer window. Didn't talk about the transfer window. He wasn't involved, and you've just heard him say there. Yeah, at the height of the transfer window, yes, but not anymore. I mean, and that's what boils me a little bit, because a lot of this has been fueled by both of them. It's not just Eddie and it's not just Mitchell. It's the two of them actually not just coming out there and putting it all on the table and just saying, here it is. This is, us being completely transparent. This is my point. This is what I do. I have involvements with him during the transfer, the height of the transfer window, and after that, I do my job. He does his. Full stop.
Table service, yeah.
I wish I'd got the same table service.
To finish.
Hi, Eddie. Without putting words into your mouth, could you have shot much better in terms of age and increasing value when you look at Bruno Guimaraes, Sven Botman, Anthony Gordon, Alexander Isak, and potentially the likes of Sandro Tonali and Harvey Barnes?
As I said earlier, I'm very, very proud of those signings, and I've said all along, I think in press conferences, that I don't want to make it about old structure and new structure, but those signings, obviously, I played a huge part in. And I took ownership of all those signings. And I said that in here, even if they're good, bad, I'll take ownership of that, because ultimately I was always the final decision maker on those signings. And I was very proud to sign those players. I think they've been brilliant signings for the where we were and the long-term future of the club. And I really believe in them, and I still do. So you've asked me a question. I'll always try and answer it if I can, openly and honestly. I'd certainly like to find a few more of them if we could.
And there was a lot of work went into those transfer windows, wasn't there, in terms of the immediacy but also the long-term future of the club?
Well, I think that's the balance. I think you can't. Look, we were in a relegation battle, so yes, a couple of those signings were more short-term in that moment because you needed instant results. Relegation was not something we could contemplate. But always in the back of my mind, with every signing I try to make, it's always about, yes, can they impact the team now, but will they impact the team in the right way in the future? And sometimes there's a bigger positional need for the here and now, and sometimes you're buying a player for thinking, well, in a year's time he could turn into be a regular starter for us. So there's loads of things that go into it. It's never as clear or as easy as everyone thinks. But the key thing now is the future and making sure we get future transfer windows right, because ultimately that is the most important thing at any club, because for you to be successful, you have to recruit well.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Dom, quick one.
Just one.
I'm just going to hold it there. Very interesting, that bit. Absolutely bang on. Eddie said everything that you expect him to say, and that's why I said it is a hard job to highlight a player that's going to come in and not only get you going now, but also down the road, because obviously not everybody does, and every single manager and every single sporting director of football, whatever you want to call them, have had failings in the past. Paul Mitchell's had failings, and Dougie Freeman, the guy who we wanted in before Paul Mitchell, obviously one that Eddie Howe fancied massively. And was that another pull to try and persuade Gay to come at a better price? Nobody will ever know the answer to these questions. And I'm just going to put this one up because I've just seen this on the screen. Ron, I don't have a problem with Eddie Howe at all. I have a problem with people that actually aren't transparent, buddy. I love Eddie Howe. I love the work that he does, his commitment to the cause and everything else. But like I said, to douse a fire, you need products to put over the fire. And when there's a fire raging, I want the club to unite together and stop this tittle-tattling that creates more of the issues down the road. I want everybody to be open and honest. And like I said, Eddie, you've already seen that Eddie hasn't been open and honest. And he could put this to bed easily by answering a couple of simple questions and being a little bit more transparent. That's all I'm alluding to, because that gets rid of all the nonsense then that journalists go and report. And the problem is with journalists go and report it, eventually it will start to affect, the club as a whole. And that to me,
hang on, Gary, because you're hanging a lot of that hat on what you were saying Eddie said in this press conference about having nothing to do with the window just closed.
Yeah.
Now, you're saying that you heard Eddie say that in the press conference. I didn't hear him say that.
I can play it back. He's got VAR. It's not a problem. Like I said, he's made a statement there that in the other one that he said he has nothing to do with the transfers, and now all of a sudden at the transfer height, yes, we were talking, but not anymore. So that's what I'm saying. It makes a mockery when he says he has no communication.
No. You're confusing two separate issues there. You're confusing the fact that he said he's had no communication since Paul Mitchell's interview with him saying he had nothing to do with the transfer window. We know he had everything to do with the transfer window, and I don't think there's any dispute about that.
I think you're coming at the wrong vein. What Eddie Howe said during the involvement of getting Gay was he hasn't spoken to Paul Mitchell and that he doesn't get involved in any of the transfer saga. Right? That's what he said. Am I right or wrong?
I don't think he did say that, no.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'm wrong then. But I'm sure I have got a video somewhere where he comes there, and that's why you had the response from Paul Mitchell.
I have never heard Eddie say I had nothing to do with that, with the transfer window just gone. No way.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there'll be somebody in a minute. Yeah, there you go. Just come in. Gary's right in that Eddie said in this window he is most hands-off he has ever been in a few weeks ago. And that's what he said. He's never been involved in any of the transfer saga that was going on during the Gay transfer.
No, he said he's never been more hands-off. That doesn't mean he wasn't hands-on at all. As far as I'm concerned, I'm sick to death of Gay. I can't be bothered with all this Gay shit. But there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever, and I've never heard Eddie say that there is any doubt that he'd identified Gay as the player he wanted. And let's face it, that was basically what the summer window was after we'd done all those initial dealings. So where's the...
No,
where has he said I had nothing to do with it at all? I think he identified the target and then he left it up to other people.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, in an interview, when you are asked by a journalist if you are you involved in the transfer, and he said no, categorically, no.
I've never seen that.
Well, that's what I'm like I say, I will go back and I will have a look because I may be wrong, but I am absolutely sure that that's what Eddie Howe said in a previous interview. Then you get Mitchell come out saying he's done nothing but speak to Eddie Howe. Now you've just got Eddie come out saying, to the height of the transfer window, yes, we had good communication, but not anymore. I'm doing my job, he's doing his. And that's
exactly
what I expect him to hear. Yeah, exactly.
Up to the height of the transfer window, we had lots and lots of conversations. And then it was out of my hands and up to the hierarchy to get the job done.
Exactly, and that's what I said. For me, in the previous
well, that's not him saying I didn't have anything. That's not him saying I didn't have anything to do with the summer window.
I'm not talking about this interview. I'm talking about a previous interview that he had with the journalists, where he said he had nothing to do with the Gay saga before Mitchell.
Well, I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. And that's what I'm saying. That's what boils me a little bit, is the fact that this could have been completely washed away if he'd have been a bit more transparent in previous interviews.
What needs to happen? What needs to happen right now to stop all this repeating itself, rinse and repeat, is for somebody, one of these journalists, to go to Downs and saying, what is the fucking score? What's going on here? It's not up to Eddie Howe to answer that. It's not up to Paul Mitchell to answer that. It's up to Darren Neils to answer that.
Well, like I say, I think a lot of this issue has come from the Darren Eels, obviously dancing on the stage, saying what a transformative window it's going to be, and we've had nothing. And I don't think it's Mitchell that's been thrown on the buzz. I don't think Eddie Howe's been thrown.
Again, that's not true that we've had nothing, by the way.
No. But what all I'm saying to you is, we don't. I'm not saying either of them are at fault. I just think if they were both a little bit more transparent, none of this fueling the fire, which the journalists are now taking on board and running with, and it just creates a bad press for the whole of the Newcastle club itself in other people's eyes.
Right.
We don't want to be like other teams that are always in the press for the wrong things. We want to be in the press for the right things, and that's winning on the field. And that's what drives me insane, because, like you've just said, for the last 4 weeks now, all we've talked about is bloody Gay, Paul Mitchell, and Eddie. We haven't talked about anybody else. I know there's been 2 weeks where we haven't had football.
But it's longer than that, man. It's longer than that. This goes back to Germany.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. It does. That's when it all started, wasn't it?
But that's the point I'm making. The point I'm making, nothing's changed, right?
No.
Nothing's changed. It's still the same as it was then. Eddie was saying, right, if you want me to be manager of this club, coach of this club, these are my boundaries. And he came out and said that. And then, as far as I was aware, that was, again, it was Krakow who brought all that up after Germany.
Yeah.
And then when Paul Mitchell arrived in Japan, they kissed and made up, and Eddie came out and made his statement. Yeah, we're hunky-dory now. The boundaries have been drawn. Everybody knows where they stand. We're all. And that was in the start of the a couple of weeks into the transfer window. And at that stage, Eddie had identified Guy as the player that he wanted. And that's on record as well. That's who I want. Go and get him. The price was wrong, so it didn't get him. Mitchell went up and says, well, look, we can't get Guy, but maybe and there was a supposition. He went, we can't get Guy, but we'll get you this, this, and this. And then he said, no, I didn't want that and that. If I have Guy, I'll soldier on and be judged on the results. And it's just making mountains out of molehills, man. It's doing my head in.
That's what I said. All it does is fuel the fire because, like I said, we've just spent, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes talking about what Paul Mitchell said and what Eddie Howe has come back now and said, and nothing about the football. And as supporters, I'm not a journalist. I don't want to know about what's happening in the world with the war and God knows what. I'm not interested in, what these guys are really doing behind the scenes, whether they're holding hands together, going skipping down the field. It doesn't interest me whatsoever. What I want is for them to both perform in their individual roles and get things right behind the scenes to stop these journalists making a mockery out of us. Because again, having seen what happened when obviously the fans started to turn on Sir Bobby and he obviously then got the sack, the last thing I want is for Eddie to get the sack. I don't want Paul Mitchell to get the sack. I want there to be some harmony in the club, but there has to be a discussion. They're not going to agree on everything. I understand that, but I don't want to say I am not involved at all, and the other want to say yes, he has been involved, because all it looks like then that there's a massive rift and a massive wedge between certain individuals at the club, which there obviously isn't. That's all I was saying. But Rod says, Crystal Palace did screw us over, mate. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's finish what he was saying anyway.
One, Eddie, on January, when would you expect those discussions and planning to start?
Pretty soon, I imagine. I think you have to be organised. You have to be very thorough in your preparation to make sure you know what you want. And of course, we need to see what we can and can't do financially.
So there you go. That was the end of the interview. We seem to have gone on a little bit further than I expected. Apologies. I'm just going to try and stop that because I've got another one going off in the background now. But and
that was spot on. When the exit, so you haven't spoken to Paul Mitchell since the window ended. No. When do you expect to start talking about the January window? Well, very soon.
Very soon. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what you expect him to do, isn't it? That's what I'm saying. He'd already said in the start that they're not talking about the January window yet because we're too early in this season, in the start of the season. But you expect them to go, especially in the next couple of weeks, to start making some inroads into the January. Because, like I said, what happened with a lot of the potential highlighted players. No, I'm not going to say there were players that were put forward by Eels or whether they were Eddie Howe's. A lot of the names that were out there that we were linked to, and I'm going to say that very much tongue in cheek, were either one placed on other contracts, two left for other teams, other clubs that bought them out, or three turned out to be not interested in coming. Full stop. So we lost potential going forward, and like you've often said, it's not just one position where we need strengthening in the side, and which is absolutely true. We need strengthening in three places for me, but some will say two, some will say four, depending on how you look at the team. Let's have a look at some of the highlighted ones. There's loads in the chat, guys, and again, thanks so much for giving us your support.
Can I just say, Gary? We've got the show on tonight, right? And I can almost foresee the future because Chris will be coming on saying, "Mighty Wayne, you're a nugget, Now there's obviously conflict. There's obviously civil war going on in the club. Da-di-da-di-da. Why can't you say it? Da-di-da." I choose not to say it. Yes, there's obviously some nonsense going on there. But the bottom line is, I want Eddie Howe to concentrate on the team and let somebody else worry about what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
Dead simple. Dead simple.
That's what I said.
I'm interested in
making an
football.
mountain out of Molo. Absolutely, and me.
Absolutely.
Alan McMurtry said, was going to say draw, but after seeing how good players performed internationally, fancy a 2-1 win. There you go. So there's that positivity we want to see. let's have a look at some of the start.
But here's the thing, Gary, right? All this massive negativity that we're seeing and the supposedly stupid wick start we've had to the season. We've got 32 forecasters in the competition, in the Premier forecast competition. And we've got 30 Newcastle away wins and 2 draws.
Yeah.
That's how much negativity there is among the fan base.
But that's what I said. It's not, I ain't being funny, but there's always going to be a bias, isn't there? You know what I mean? None of us are going to say, yeah, you're looking at facts, you're looking at figures. Wolves have lost 2, drawn 1. We've won 2 and drawn 1. So you look at them figures and you start thinking, oh, we're going to be upbeat. They're going to be a bit down in confidence. It should be a win. But we all know, as fans as well, going to the Molineux isn't easy. We've got draw after draw after draw. Last time we won was what did we say, 17 in the Championship, and then going back to 2011 in the Premier League. So we know it's not going to be an easy game. And like I say, when you're predicting scores, very rarely get people say we're going to lose. Even though, and I bet you, even against Man City,
anybody with half a brain will have forecast 1-1.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at statistics, 64%, something stupid.
1-1, yeah. But what I'm saying is our squad is so much better than their squad, and we're going to start clicking sooner rather than later.
Yeah. That's what I said. When you look
3-0.
I was going to say 1-1 as daft it looks, but after the internationals, and then having a look at stats and stuff like that, for me, it was a case of if them lads come back to us in the form that they've shown at international duty, I can't see nothing but a win. That's how it looked to me, but we all know Eddie. Eddie may not always pick the lads that we expect him to pick, and that's what I said. It's what Eddie's got in his mind. Tactics. We have to run with it, and we have to agree sometimes to disagree with what Eddie's picked. But he runs by the pants of the seat of his pants sometimes, and
he lives and dies by results.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's all you can hope for. He gets it right on the day and we all get it wrong. Queen of Hearts is the first one on here. You can give plenty of insight.
Queenie, hello there, dear.
Yeah, but what you say will always be speculated on, your words looked into it as a never-ending circle. You're absolutely right, mate. I think they will twist.
It's a never-ending circle, all right. God, I wish it would come to an end.
Josh Toon Philly, guess I'm blind. Being a rift, it's one possibility for sure, but there are plenty of other possibilities too. So it comes down to really what side of the fact you want to see. Yeah, I also agree with that. The trouble is, you see, like I said, good news doesn't travel as quick as bad news. And we know that as fact because it happens in real life. And, if papers and social media want clicks, they will put down so much crap just to get you to click on the site itself. So Omar said, exactly, Gary, absolute farce. I think that was obviously going to Craig Hope's comments. Chris has said the protagonists have created all this, Gary, so they have to ask about this proper questions, in my opinion. Colton has put down drama let Eddie
questions.
Drama let Eddie coach and let I think that's Mitchell buy and sell players.
Yeah,
absolutely.
As long as they're the players that we can work with.
That's what I said. They've got to fit in the system, and not everybody does. And that, I mean, Woods didn't. Chris Wood come in, even though you say temporary. I'm sure he wasn't bought as a temporary at the start, but he just didn't work in our system. He never looked like scoring. Yet for Forest, he looks a different centre forward. So it is strange how certain individuals play differently in certain formations. Tension and unrest, Hamlet says. Mitchell coming out and saying system not fit for purpose and shite. This is him hiding from a bad transfer window. Okay. Lee McFarlane. Yep, you're all stuck with this useless journalism. It's so lazy and bloody awful, time wasting junk.
Correct.
I mean, apart from the first few comments, which was obviously about the international players and about obviously Gary O'Neill and Wolves, I didn't hear another question about Wolves. Did you?
It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
It's a figure of speech, Gary. I don't think people think it's an actual war going on. Yeah, I know it's a figure of speech, Chris, and I didn't think there was out there shooting at each other, walking 10 paces, turning and shooting and stuff like that. But all I'm saying to you is they shouldn't be even mentioning the word war, because that just conflict is bloody awful in any terminology. And there's a lot of people suffering in this world without the word war being used. That's all I'm saying. Football is a beautiful game. No need for all BS. Yep, absolutely spot on. Search has put down, Mitchell is at fault.
Let's
by
get
fanning
back
the
to
flames
football.
in public, throwing out phrases like "not fit for full purpose" about the current colleagues' work. Yeah, I can understand that as well. You see, that's what I said. I don't. Again, I think Mitchell is at fault because he hasn't got a filter, and that's what I said. It's not. I don't think he meant it by what has happened. I think he means it by going forward. We can't just keep going and spending money. But I may be wrong, and that's what I said. It's only my interpretation of what.
Well, no, you see, I think you're spot on there. I think he said that our previous transfer windows have been utilised, using up every spare single penny that we've been
allowed to.
That's been available for us to spend under the FFP PSR restrictions. That came unstuck big style when we didn't we didn't make one big sale. So that resulted in having to sell Anderson and Mindy. And what Paul Mitchell is saying quite rightly is that you can't continue to buy at the rate we were buying without selling. He quoted the 0 to 100 sales versus purchases ratio. He says that's not sustainable. That's not fit for purpose, and he's right to say that.
Absolutely.
But we're now in a much better financial position than we were 2.5 years ago in terms of the commercial revenue and overall revenue that the club now generates. So we are able now to spend without selling crown jewels, which Newcastle have done for 60 years. We've always sold our crown jewels.
That's true.
This is the first transfer window when we've got a relatively successful team in my lifetime, when we haven't sold any of the crown jewels in the window. And that's why the window for me was this absolute disaster that everybody's painting it to be.
No, exactly.
The fact that we were able to retain Isaac, Bruno, J7, Gordon, and we've got the likes of Botman and Tonali coming in. There's 5 players. We've got Tino and Hall developing, coming through. There's 7 out of 11. Pope's not the best goalie in the world. He's certainly not the worst. That's 8 out of 11. You know, what we're there or thereabouts. We've got Harvey Barnes, who can improve, in my opinion. We've got Lewis Bailey coming through. We've got Botman coming back. I do not understand all the doom and gloom. It's beyond me.
Absolutely. It's got nothing to do with the playing field, mate, I don't think. Yes, there could be a little bit of improvement, I suppose, in the right wing position, because obviously we've all said, unfortunately, if you could mould the two of them together, you'd have a half decent player in that right wing. We just don't get enough goal contributions, I don't think, from the right side, which would help us going forward about rotating players.
Yeah, and as we know, so they are the two positions that were arguably struggling is right wing and right centre back, just as cover for Share. But as Kraft has done admirably, come in and stood in for Share, albeit not so much in the the attacking side of things. And I just think we're in such a good place, and everybody's so negative, pissing on about Eddie Howe and Mitchell having a bit of a
ding dong
tiff.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it is, isn't it? Just a tiff. But they're just making it out to be a little bit more than it actually is, and that's what drives me insane.
Exactly.
What you've just said there is absolutely bang on. And what I liked about Eddie saying about now Kraft probably spending more time in that centre back position to learn the trade even more. I think that also signifies how well Kraft has done since obviously Shaw got banned. So that's a good pat on the back for him, isn't it? Going forward. So that was an interesting point that Eddie made. Lee McFarlane, he made it clear he was happy with other people in the club were outspoken about the other stuff. It must bore him to death fielding those questions. Yeah, absolutely. I think it drives us insane listening to him. Never mind him. Almar Sadiq, Howe's job is to manage. Mitchell is causing more issues than what Dan did. What's the truth? What's Mitchell done? Unearthed gems. Why did he leave his last 20 roles? I am sick of this lad. Okay, that's an interesting one.
No, Mitchell is top of the tree at the job that he does. There's no doubt about that. His recruitment has been fantastic. I mean, look at Southampton, where he unearthed money, at Tottenham, Son, just quality.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously comes with a lot of credibility because obviously Man U were vying for him before Dan Ashworth. And for whatever reason, he never batted an eye going to Man U. So I'm not sure the reasons behind that. But now, if you listen to a lot of the Man U fans, they would still rather have Paul Mitchell and Dan Ashworth because it's about future proofing. The problem is if you look at the lads that they've just bought in and they've spent all this money again, which has put them apparently over the ceiling of the PSR by 80 million. They've got to do some serious business in January to offload a few players to actually fall in line with the rules. So it's going to be interesting going forward. And like I said, it's easy to buy players. It's easy to buy players to fill a void with just names. What you've often struggled with is them so-called players fitted into the system, and that's when it becomes difficult. Yeah, and what Paul Mitchell was alluding to, in my eyes, was not buying for buying's sake. We need to be future-proofing by bringing in younger, talented players, and we can bring them into a system through the academy coming forward, so futurising the club down the line where you're not having to go out there and spend a lot of money. A very similar way to the likes of Liverpool have done, the likes of Man City have done, and United have done in the past. I mean, obviously their Champions League squad of 99 were all from the academy. And that's what I said. You have to think about the future, and we haven't dealt with our academy.
That'll never happen again. That was a one-off, that.
Yeah, I'm not saying it.
Alex Ferguson was the luckiest man in the world to inherit that youth squad that he did. There's no other youth squad in the world ever produced 500 cap internationals virtually.
No, that's right. And that's what I said. It was very lucky. But what I'm saying to you is you've got to cast your net. That's what I'm saying. You have got to cast your net further afield. And that's the job that I've seen Paul Mitchell do this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming to the club. And that's what I'm looking for.
But that press conference today was about the upcoming game against Wolverhampton Wanderers at Molineux. And we've spent 2.5 hours nearly talking about a rift between Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell. I'm sick of it. I am sick of it.
I'm sick of it. PDK, if the journos are still asking these questions in the next presser, then in my opinion, they will be the cause of any rift. Well, I think they're the cause of the rift now, mate, to be fair.
They're already the cause. No, what needs to happen is instead of asking them at a press conference to Eddie, they need to address the question to the CEO and say, what the hell is going on? Let him come out and make a statement.
Yeah, because he's gone really quiet all of a sudden, hasn't he, Mr. Eels?
Oh, hasn't he?
Mitchell is
yes.
rightly looking for the future. So that is a certain. Eddie wants the ready-made article, and I feel we can do a bit of both. Absolutely, buddy. I think you're absolutely right. But again, I know people often question about the PSR situation, thinking that we've got all this richer ownership now. We still are a long way from the big clubs and the commercial business side of things. And I think that's somewhere where, like, Mr.
We're a long
Silverstone's
way
doing
from
a
the
great
big
job.
club.
Yeah,
We've got a lot more money than people think we've got.
I know you keep on saying that, but I haven't seen I haven't seen the paperwork. I believe it when I see the article.
Well,
Interesting
you've
that
seen
Howe
mine.
I've seen yours. Yeah. I could put something down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, but mine are all fact-based.
Well, I'm not saying they're not. All I'm saying to you is, if we had 130 million, like you allude to, then we would have at least bought a right winger. And according to what I've heard in amongst these conferences and chats, is we only had the money to buy on one player, and that was at 55 million pounds. So that's what I said. I can't understand where the money's gone to if that's the case. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying
That's a
that's
question.
yeah. Where has the money gone? Interesting that Hope will only concentrate on the negatives, never once mentioned in his article about the excellent appointment of James Bunce. Well, he did. He mentioned about James Bunce.
Oh, the excellent start of the season.
Yeah, excellent appointment. James Bunce, the performance director, and a great job he has done. I think obviously he did mention obviously James Bunce
It's far too early to say how good a job he's done.
Absolutely. Mitchell basically said in public that the manager's nephew was part of a system which was not fit for purpose. You've got to wonder about his professionalism when he's gobbing off like that in public.
Well, again, I have never heard Paul Mitchell mention Andy Howe once. You search Terminator Seed or bringing Andy Howe's name into the equation by connecting it to what Paul Mitchell did say, which was the current scouting system, recruitment system, is not fit for purpose. The not fit for purpose relates purely, as Paul Mitchell said, to the spending 100 and recouping 0. That is the system that is not fit for purpose. Not the actual people involved, not the scouting system, that we need to get into a system where we can sell players before we can buy players. In my ideal world, the players will sell are the squad players who are on the bench, who are not better than our first 11, and we should be by then. For example, now, if we want to buy a right winger now, let's say in the summer we bought a right winger for 70 million, a top quality right winger for 70 million. So Anthony Gordon reverts to the left. It then means that we've potentially got Harvey Barnes to sell to somebody else. And Paul Mitchell finds a younger, capable deputy to Anthony Gordon, and we can then sell Harvey Barnes for 45 million. We haven't got any players at the minute who anybody will go 20 million for. Never mind 45 million. So to interpret that anything Paul Mitchell said was a direct slur on Andy Howe is just mischievous. It's got no bearing in fact at all.
Well, like I said, without knowing the what happens in the back room and how they do this scouting, situation, I've never been involved, obviously, at that level. I used to scout for a local team of mine, but it was totally different to the way these guys scout. It was never worldwide, and it was always grassroots on a Sunday morning, freezing me bloody tits off. So that was always interesting.
Best place for you.
Absolutely. If Howe doesn't want to buy in January, get him out. Sorry, but that will be the last straw for me. But if we are in 7th or up, I give him till the summer. You can't have it both ways, trolls.
Right.
And like
First thing to say to trolls is, what is your prediction for the Wolves game? Because you're one of only 4 that we're waiting for. So first thing, trolls, get your Wolves prediction in.
I think he's.
And as regards to Eddie not wanting to buy in January, I mean, what are we talking about here?
Ryan's put down.
Trolls, we're loving a bit, but you know, of course, Eddie wants to improve the squad in January.
Yeah, but I do think there's a point of, like, you know, the way they both look at players coming in. You've already alluded to Mitchell Bry's the player to develop. Eddie likes the player here and now, and I think that's what I said. I think you've got 2 people in different frameworks of wanting the here and now from Eddie, and Paul Mitchell saying, well, if we buy him and work on him for 12 to 18 months, he's going to be here and now. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I said. Sometimes you've got to look at it from both aspects, both opinions. Both will have a valid opinion,
and so Paul's job and Paul's reputation and Paul's ego depends upon him doing exactly that: identifying young talent, bringing them through, and bringing them into world-class players. Yeah. Eddie's immediate concern is results on the pitch. So, of course, his focus is going to be different.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean to say that the 2 can't be harmoniously combined.
No, I'm not saying that.
There doesn't have to be civil war.
No, exactly. Ryan says, Gary, if Mitchell can't find 4 young players who can turn into the next big thing, will Eddie Howe have an issue with that? Because if he does, he's anti-coaching, because he's here to turn kids into stars. Well, we all know that Eddie's done an amazing job with some of the players that have been in. So I have no doubt on Eddie's coaching ability. I don't have any
none whatsoever
with his ability, because we know he can do it. The biggest thing you've got to try and work on, and we've seen it when the youngsters come into the first team. We've only ever seen a few that have looked like they can do it, and because there's a massive jump from kids football, academy football to Premier League. You know, you're not going from academy to Division 2 here, or even the National League. A lot of these kids would struggle in. And I said it's about growing them the right way. And when they get to a point where they're good enough to go on loan, that's where they should be cutting their teeth. And I don't think we've seen enough of that in the past. I think we've had players that have potentially been good enough, and they've been sold on. Any of our future stars coming from the academy in the past, we've actually had money from, because we've never utilised them. And I can't think of that lad who's just. Who was the lad who went to Liverpool who's now been sold on?
Bobby Clark. Lee Clarkson.
Lee Clarkson, exactly. And there was another one, you know, actually getting the money for him rather than saying to him, he's one for the future. He's a bright one for the future. And that's what I said. That's what we've got to stop. And again, I go around to terminology. You look at our past.
Well, again, I mean, that was basically Lee Clark said to him, you know, because this was under Ashley, of course. You're wasting your time here, son. If you've got a chance to go to Liverpool, go to Liverpool. Quite right, too. If I was his dad, I'd have said the same thing.
Yeah, but I also think if you look at our past, matey, our past history tells you that we've given players away. We very rarely have we made profit on any of the lads that have come through the door. We have a couple, but we haven't really sold them at their optimum age. We've let their contracts run right down, or they've become too old for any business. And that's what I said.
Listen, the prime example of what a director of football should do and we've only had, bear in mind, a proper director of football since PIF came in, is Yankubi Minty, who was basically scouted by Ashworth. And there's a player we got for 7 million and we've sold him for 35. So that is the job of a director of football. But the trouble was with the PSR and FFP guidelines that we had to work within, we ended up having to sell them now instead of, getting the benefit of it.
Yeah. But like I said, that's the problem, isn't it? We've had more of an issue because of the PSR situation, keeping hold of the lads that we've already scouted and not even had the chance to put a black and white strip on. And that's what I said. There's two sides of the coin that you've got to look at there. When you look at the money side of things, because we've never had the sellable assets in the squad beforehand, we're having to sell the lads that haven't even played for us, and that's why I said it's a catch-22 within at the minute, and that's why I was alluding to what Mitchell was saying.
Newcastle's academy has been a joke for 50 years.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I said. That's why I think when Mitchell said about fit for purpose, it's been taken out of all context. It's not the fact that it's not working. It's not allowing us to grow as a club because none of them players are actually bringing them through to the first team. And it's not allowing the first teamers that we've got then to bring other players on to be sold on. So you've not got that natural progression. There comes a time there's like we love to say draw a line in the sand with our academy players to the first team. We draw a line in the sand when they get an age and then we get rid of them. There's no progression whatsoever. And I think he needs to change that. It needs to be turned into a different direction. Ryan's come on it. Oh, he's come on again, Ryan. And he said, we are 240 million behind Chelsea and 300 million away from Spurs income. The sponsors are miles higher than ours. But I think we said before, I don't know what.
But you also then you have to take into account that Chelsea's wage bill is twice what our wage bill is, and Chelsea's income is twice what our income is. We have 300 and 100 million pound a year in salaries. Chelsea are 600 and 200 million pound a year in salaries.
Yeah, but every club will work to the means. Every club has to. That's what I'm saying. They work to the business model, work to your means, and they put a small amount back into the pot for that rainy day. But it's not a lot. Beers.
I don't think Chelsea have been putting much back in the pot.
Well, to be fair, there's if you talk about rift, if you look at Bowley and Clearlake now, there's certainly something going on there, isn't there? They need to brief the press prior to the press conference on the subjects, and if they wish to ask different questions, to address them to the appropriate people. Now, there you go. That's as simple as that. But
that makes sense. But by the way, I am not in favour of that type of press conference. I think the journalists should be allowed to ask whatever they want to ask. But I think if they do ask the questions, they've then got to be content. It would be. I'm pretty sure that the questions are vetted anyway. Which again, I'm not a great fan
kicked out of the press conference at one point, wasn't he? Kicked out and banned from the press.
Yeah, that was when Bruce was there and Ashley was there.
He was there. Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, Craig Hope was the one fans' ally during the Bardo days.
Yeah.
But I think he's taken up the gauntlet. I mean, there is another possible scenario, of course, which everybody is it's like the elephant in the room, because I know for a fact that Craig Hope is a massive Eddie fan, and maybe he's doing Eddie's dirty work for him. if he's got something going on the side with Eddie.
Okay, that's
For
interesting.
to bring all this to a head once and for all, and let's get it sorted. That's another possibility. I know it's one of my famous conspiracy theories, but there you go. Because he's the one that keeps on bringing them, putting the poke in the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Beer said, I'm with Win. There is money, but we need to spend it correctly on key first team positions due to the PSR constraints. Solvency is not a problem. Okay.
Correct.
We'll know more in January. That's all I'm saying. Chris has said, what about we not using data to scout? Well, again, without knowing what the way we scout, I know everybody keeps on saying that Eddie likes his Premier League proven players and things like that.
No, hang on, no. This again, that is exactly right, because that's precisely what Mitchell was saying. That our system hitherto, this is going back right through the Ashley era, was not data driven at all. It should be data driven. That's why Brighton are so successful, because it is data driven. And that's another thing that Paul Mitchell is saying, that the current system is not fit for purpose in this day and age, because it needs to be more data driven. In order to do that, we need to recruit data analysts, which of course they're doing. We've got adverts running right now. If you're a data analyst, get yourself in there. And again, but for to then conflagrate that with saying that he's saying the current scouting system is not fit for purpose are two completely different things.
Yeah, that's what I said. It has to be with context. But for me, without knowing the current system, how can you actually speculate on it? Because it is just speculation, and that's what I said. For me,
well, we do know the current system.
What's that?
We do know the current system. The current system was Eddie Howe and the scouting team. Very little data at all.
That's what I said. You don't know what system they use. That's what I'm saying. Is it just a phone call? Is it a video? Which I know Eddie is very fond of. But what I'm saying is, regarding the data profile, you can't tell me that there is some information about what these players are like regarding information. I'd be very, very hardly surprised if they haven't got a little bit of up-to-date information going forwards. But I'm not saying I know that. I just find that very difficult in this day and age.
Well, it would not surprise me at all if the system through Mike Ashley and up until the PIF takeover, and obviously then everything takes time to bring into place. If you're talking about data, then we do what we do, and transfer market, so let's go.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Searcher said, I agree with you, Win, and I agree that Mitchell hopefully generally meant that. But as a professional operator, I think he should show more tact and clarity when discussing these things in public. Like I said, I think it's just the filter side of things. I don't think Mitchell has a filter, and that's obviously come across as being a problem. Now, I've just looked at the time, and again, I apologise, Win, because I'm obviously cutting a massive chunk out of your holiday. You should be now in your
I missed me bus an hour ago.
Yeah, you should be on your budgie smugglers now on the side of the pool.
No, I should be tasting wine and drinking banana beer.
Oh, see, maybe I've saved your kidneys and your liver. You never know.
Well, maybe.
We've got to find a happy medium with the schedule. So maybe 9:30 to 11 from now on. The things is, what is the best time for everyone to join? People say 10 p.m. is too late. So 11.
Well, let's. How many have you got? I can't see from what I'm looking at here. How many have we got watching at the minute?
120 plus. So
right. So everybody who's watching now, stick in. What time would you prefer the evening show to be?
And see where we're at.
Just see what we get out of
that. Beer Viking says the budgie smugglers you have a picture of Dubravka.
You've seen the photograph.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, buddy, if I'm honest, for me, it doesn't really matter. 9:30 for me is a good one. It's nice and in between. So from my point of view, I think 9:30 makes it easier for me. What about you, Win?
Makes no difference to me.
Makes no difference for Win whatsoever. So 8 p.m. most people are back from work by then. So anything from 8 p.m. Ryan's saying in the thing. 9:30 Brian Quinn is saying. So there's lots of people saying around about between 8 and 9. So again, 8's too early for me because of the kids. Ron saying 1 a.m. PDK saying 9 p.m. Search is
Well,
saying
2 a.m. you've got extra time.
So we've got some we've got in and around the 9:30. So I would say 9:30 is probably going to be the happy medium because it's there or thereabouts. Alan, thank you so much, my friend, for your £4.99. It's
Thank
there's no
you
question
very,
on
very
there.
much.
But you are a star and a scholar. So that's it. Alan's saying bye bye anyway. So thanks, Alan. All the best, buddy.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much, Alan.
Yeah, so I am gonna say goodbye myself because I've just realised that I am so late for getting the kids, and I'm going to be so told off. So I am going to say a swift goodbye, and get my backside in gear. Win, thanks so much for today. Yeah.
It's goodbye from him.
And it's a goodbye from him. Over in Madeira. I'd rather be with you.
How are the lads?
Absolutely. And lasses.
In no civil war. All peace and tranquility at the tomb.
Absolutely. So I think Chris is going to do it for 9:30 tonight. A little bit of a jolly, a little bit of a relax, talk about footy. So come and join us. You're more than welcome. Get involved.
What is it? Talk about pussy.
Footy. Bloody hell, man.
Funny. I thought you said an empty like talk about pussy.
Yeah, we're still in front of the watershed timeline. I wouldn't have said that. Bless you. Anyway, like I said, come and join us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for staying with us. It's been a long show.
Anybody who stayed with us for 2 hours and 42 minutes wants a medal the size of a frying pan, mate.
Absolutely. Maybe they'll get a pair of your budgie smugglers. You never know.
Indeed.
Anyway, indeed. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for joining me. Again, thanks to everybody that's watching. Thanks to everybody that's gifted. Chris and Alan has gifted. So again, we couldn't do it without your support. So thanks to everybody involved. See you tonight. Hopefully, it'll be a 9:30 start, just for a bit of jolly. Bring a beer and bring a smile, and let's away the lads and lasses. See you later on, guys. Look at that. The palm trees in the distance. Yeah.
Oh, what's happened here?
Oh, there you go. I can see you now. That's it. Say bye-bye, mate.
That's where I'm now.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Take it easy, everybody.